There's a lot of people in this room who are older than I am. So I'm officially apologizing that I'm doing the talking, especially since there are Anosh Machshuvim, the Rav is here. It's not my style, but it's what I need to do. So I'm apologizing. I mean it. I mean it. L'chaim lebracha, l'chaim lebracha. If you should help that Yud Shvat should be a Seder Samitis, and we shouldn't just change Yud Shvat. It should change what comes after Yud Shvat. L'chaim everybody. L'chaim lebracha. L'chaim lebracha. The Rebbe writes in the letters about Yud Shvat that he calls the Yom HaGadol VaKodesh, the Groise Heilige Tag, the great and holy day of Yud Shvat. Somebody told me that Rabbi Groner Alav Shalom said that Shabbos is called Yom Gadol VaKodesh. Yom Gadol VaKodesh. So Yud Shvat is Yom Gadol VaKodesh, a Groise and Heilige Tag. It's a great and it's a holy day. I was thinking that Yom HaGadol has to do with Mashiach, and Yom HaKodesh has to do with Yom Kippur. And in a way they're opposites. Because Yom Kippur is when you remove from the world, and the whole idea of Mashiach is that the world is filled with the Eibishter. So when the Rebbe calls Yud Shvat Yom HaGadol VaKodesh, there's a dichotomy, there's a duality to it. So I want to add another thing, and that is that the Sichas Nefriedike Rebbe, where he talks about the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, and the Heilige Baal Shem Tov was forced. The Baal Shem Tov was forced to reveal himself on Chai Elul. Chai Elul, the Chassidus has an official birthday. Chai Elul Shnas Tov Tzadik Daled. That means 289 years ago, when Chai Elul, the Baal Shem Tov was literally tricked with the Mois Genart, so they had to be Nizgale. They first taught him Torah, and after they taught him Torah, they told him now he has to become a rebbe, and he said, listen, if you had told me the conditions, I would have been able to decide if I want to learn the Torah and become a rebbe. But they didn't give him that choice. So the Baal Shem Tov was Nizgale, he became a rebbe, and he really didn't want to. So the Baal Shem Tov was disappointed. The Baal Shem Tov wasn't happy about it. And the Friedrich Rebbe calls it the Groise Heilige Glickliche Tag. Yom HaGadol VaKodesh VaMushe. The Groise Heilige Glickliche Tag. The great and holy and fortunate day. Special day, the Baal Shem Tov was revealed. So the Rebbe calls Yud Shvat Yom HaGadol VaKodesh for Chassidim of our generation. You ever saw the Friedrich Rebbe? Yeah, you saw the Friedrich Rebbe, but I don't think you did, right? That's about it. You saw the Friedrich Rebbe. So we're Chassidim of the Rebbe Lugazon, the Rebbe, Der Ashvi. Rabbi Fuchs was my teacher, Rabbi Hirschel Fuchs, many, many years ago. So I remember Yud Shvat, I was 10 years old, I was in his class, and he said to us, for me, Yud Shvat is a bittersweet day, because I knew the Friedrich Rebbe. For you, Yud Shvat is only a happy day, only a positive day, because we have one relationship with the Rebbe. So Yud Shvat is Yom HaGadol VaKodesh VaMushe. It's a great and it's a holy and it's a very fortunate day. We can't imagine. Remember Asher Batumah, there was a Yid in 7 said named Asher Sasonkin. He was first of all, I can't let if you mention Vesen, but he was a Yid of Mesiras Nefesh. Asher Sasonkin was in Soviet Union. He sat in the gulags for many, many years. He didn't touch his beard. He was a person of unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh. I heard that when he came here, and he went into the Rebbe, the Chassidus, and the Rebbe addressed him as Ir. Ir is you, but it's a formal you. To an intimate, you say du. To someone close, you say du. To someone that you have respect for and you treat with a certain distance, you say Ir. The Rebbe used to say to the Bacharim, du. The minute you got married, you became an Ir. So, Asher Batumer said to the Rebbe, was weiß mir der Rebbe Arichuk? Why is the Rebbe showing me something which is showing a distance between the Rebbe and me, and the Rebbe saying Ir? A chassid wants the Rebbe should say du, directly, you, leneichach. So the Rebbe said to him, du zest ois älter von dein Taten. You look older than your father. His father was a Shmuel, the Rav. Shmuel was a real Goen. He lived in Yerushalayim. He was a real Talmud Chacham, was a Goen and a chassid. And the Rebbe says to his son, you look older than your father. The Rebbe didn't mean that his beard was whiter. That's not what he meant. And that he looked chronologically more aged. The Rebbe meant that the Zun, Yofa Kecha Ben Mikoecha Av, he was Yid of Mesiras Nefesh. So Asher Batumah was the Shamish in 770. That was his job. He taught Lukut Torah. He was a very special chassid. But we never had these big Farbrengens. So they had all the Anashim Machon used to speak. They used to make big Farbrengens for the Shchedish Kisse, for Yutas Kisse, for Yud Shvat, for Yud Beis Tammuz. Chafat made big Farbrengens. And they would ask the Shluchim who would visit, and there were the regular Mashpiyim, the people in Crown Heights, Tezvav Elul, the way touch Farbrengen, Chai Elul. Osher Batumah was always invited to speak. He was one of the last speakers. He was not a problem because he knew he wasn't going to speak too long. He had one speech, whatever day it was, whether it was Yud Kislev, it was Yud Shvat, it was Chav Tezvavel, Eb Nishva Yud Shvat, wat nish gewen ka Welt. And if it was Chayel, Eb Nishva Chayel, wat nish, he had one speech. And the speech was, this is all very important and very real and very lebendig. Eb Nishva Yud Shvat, wat nish gewen ka Welt. If not for the Rebbe and for the bracha that the Eibishter gave himself, the Meisim with the Beis Rivka, L'Hashem HaYeshua. The Beis Rivka said once, after the Rebbe was sitting in jail, when the Magonish gefelt, the Rebbe was sitting in jail, he was missing nothing. It even brought Nesiches that the Alter Rebbe was in a sakon of Kaleis HaNefesh because of the schus that he's sitting in jail for the Baal Shem Tov. So the Rabbi Yossi said, who did the Eibush do a favor when he took the Alter Rebbe out of jail? And he answered, L'Hashem HaYeshua. It's a Halei Natevik, that he did a favor for himself. The Rebbe is a real, the emes of L'Hashem HaYeshua is the Rebbe. And that's what we are celebrating. We're celebrating the Rebbe, and more importantly than that, we're celebrating our iskashus, our efforts, to be mukusha, being attached to the Rebbe, to have a relationship with the Rebbe in our mind and in our heart, and most importantly in our action. So l'chaim l'bracha, for the Eibush to helfen that Yud Shvat should be what Yud Shvat needs to be: a yom, a gadol, and a kaddish, and a meusher, a gute taga, a heilige taga, a great taga, a glickliche tag. Und der Bishbach am Alam in Greis und heilig und glicklich. Amen. L'chaim. It's a erste Sache da so jetzt. Pesach mit Varmalchus, right? The Divrei Arav. It's a bang of Yud Shvat. So the first thing you have to do, you have to start with Basi Lagani a little bit. So here's the deal, that you always want to find something that makes that year special. What's so special about this year? So the Dershe the Shumes, the Dershe Chamures, like the Rebbe says, Divas are Medayek al Kol Prat, have made an interesting observation. That this year is actually the 100th anniversary of the Maimer Basi Lagani. Mamish. It's the 100th anniversary of this Maimer Basi Lagani. And the story is that the Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, had a stroke in 1945 in Tafshin Hei at the end of the war. And as a result of that stroke, he stopped saying Chassidus. And he stopped writing Chassidus. After Tafshin Hei, after 1945, the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote no more Maimorim, as far as I know, and he said no more Maimorim. But we have in print Maimorim from Tafshin Vov and Tafshin Zayin and Tafshin Ches and Tafshin Des, Tafshin Yud, Tafshin Yud Aleph. It was noch the Estalkas. The teretz is that the Rebbe, and I don't know which Rebbe, when you say the Rebbe, you mean either the Rebbe or the Frierdiker Rebbe, or Veistach, or Yemino, or Smolu, Beinayu Chala, like it says by Meisha Naden, Veistach. They're going to stand together and the voice will come between the two of them. The Rebbe prepared old Maimorim from the Frierdiker Rebbe, particularly the Maimorim that he said in Russia and in Latvia. The Maimorim in Poland the Chassidim had. He took Maimorim that people didn't have, either from Russia or from Latvia, and he reissued them. And they're verbatim, they're word for word. And today, the Maimorim are both printed. You have the Maimir from Tafresh Pei Aleph and the Maimir from Tafshin Ches, and you see it's Pashat word for word. They took Maimorim from the Frierdiker Rebbe from the earlier years, and they reissued them for special occasions in these years, 1946, 47, 48, 49, 50, and they came out as if they're new Maimorim. I presume that the Rebbe was for sure involved, but the Frierdiker Rebbe was in some way involved in choosing which Maimir came out for what occasion. And in those 5 years, the Maimorim that we have, you could look, you could see where they come from. Peiches and Peites, the Hemshechim, the Maimorim of Tisha, you could see Pei Yimel, you could see which Maimorim from the previous Rebbe, from the earlier years, they reissued. The Maimer Basi Lagani, which the Rebbe gave out for his Histalkas, for Zilu, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out in 1950 in Tafshin Yud. It's a very odd thing. We do not have a tradition by the Chabad Rabbeim to give out a Maimer for the Yartzat of a Rebbe. There's no such musik. You go by the Alter Rebbe. I mean, the Alter Rebbe said Maimorim on the yahrzeit of his mother. Maybe. I don't know if there's a record of it. Yeah, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab said the yahrzeit Maimorim on the yahrzeit of his mother. I don't think so. The Rebbe Marash said Chassidus on the yard of his mother, the Rebbe in Chaimush's yard is Ches Tevis. Who ever heard of the date, Bachlal? In Tovshin Tes, in 1949, all of a sudden there's a Maimer for Yud Shvat. In 1 year before the Estalkus, the Friedrich gave it a Maimer. I think it's Ravi Amalek. It's Bishalach. It's Ravi Amalek for the yard of his mother and his grandmother. His grandmother passed away in 1914, and now it's 1949. It's 35 years later. His mother passed away in 1942, and now it's 1949, 7 years later. Those 7 years is no Maimon. Mitamo kumt a Maimer Yud Shvat. All of a sudden, the Rebbe gives out a Maimer for his mother's yard site, of his grandmother's yard site, in 1949, Tov Shin Tes. And the following year, Hatashiyah Hasten, it wasn't a Chiddush anymore. It wasn't a novelty. Last year there was already a Maimer for Yud Shvat. But you look at it, you see that this is unusual, because there's no Maimorim for yard, as far as I know, from earlier generations, a Maimer for the yard site of a Rebbe. We don't have such a thing. All of a sudden, the Rebbe gives out a Maimer for his Bubba's yard site and for his mother's yard site. And then, of course, on Tavshin Yud, Yud Shvat, the Rebbe was nostalgic. Friedrich Rebbe passed away, and the Rebbe said clearly that this is the Maimer of Istalkus, that even though officially the Maimer was issued for the yard site of his grandmother and his mother, it's the Maimer associated with the Friedrich Rebbe Istalkus. The Rebbe referred to the Maimer of Basi Lagani as the tzavah, as the will, as the tzavah of the Friedrich Rebbe. So the story was that in 1923, now we're holding 2023, yeah? Tov Reish Pei Gimel. Now we're holding Tov Shin Pei Gimel. Pashas Boy and Pashas Beshalach is word for word, os ba'os, Basi Lagani. Word for word Basi Lagani. The difference is this, that the Maimer that the Rebbe Rayat said Pashas Boy doesn't start Basi Lagani. It starts, and about 12, you can see the Ksav, you can see the manuscript. About 12 or 15 lines and down the Ksav, it says, it's Ksav Yad Kodesh. It's a Ksav Yad Maitik. It's not the original for the Friedrich Rebbe. It's a copy of a Chosid. In like 10 or 12 lines down in this Maimer, which starts about Tzivus Hashem, it says, to explain whatever questions the Rebbe asked about Tzivus Hashem, you have to first explain Basi Lagani. I don't know if people know this. The Maimer Basi Lagani from the Friedrich Rebbe is based on a Maimer from the Rebbe Rashab Basi Lagani. Midachzich for Reish Nun Ches. Tov for Reish Nun Ches. You can take a look. It's almost word for word. The second half of Basi Lagani, the Tzivus Hashem part with the Bizbaz Eitzris, is a Maimer of Pashas Boy in Tov Reish Pei from the Rebbe Rashab. People don't know this, but the way Maimorim go is that all the Rabbeim said the same Maimorim, Midor Lador. And they added, and they changed, and they detailed, and they deepened. But the Rebbe gave out a Maimer because it was man, the Zeit for the Maimer. So this Maimer, the Rebbe, this is 100 years, 100th anniversary, since the Friedrich Rebbe said a Maimer, Pashas Boy, 10 Prakim, and Pashas Beshalach, he said the next 10 Prakim, I believe that Maimer has a Dibur HaMaskal, which is not printed in the Kunteris, which is the last 10 Prakim of Basi Lagani. Now, of course, the thing about this, which is so remarkable, is that there was a special guest for those two Shabbosos. The Rebbe had visited the Friedrich Rebbe. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, was 20 years old. And the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Leivik, was a diehard chassid, was a Ibigemer chassid from the Rebbe Rashab. And one of the great wonders that nobody understands, the Rebbe was never in Lubavitch. The Rebbe was 18 when the Rebbe Rashab was installed. The Rebbe was 18. And the Rebbe at 18 wasn't you and me at 18. The Rebbe was 100 at 18. The Rebbe's mother said that her husband, the Rebbe Leivik, said to her, as to bar mitzvah ze gewen a goa noilam. The Rebbe at bar mitzvah was a goa noilam. So at 18, the Rebbe never saw the Rebbe Rashab. They didn't let him. They Pasha didn't let him. There's stories, there's rumors. I saw once in a sefer that the Rebbe Tzachana said, "Er eisach aber malasta nicht." He wants to go to Lubavitch, they don't let him. The Rebbe never saw the Rebbe Rashab. He came to the Friedrich Rebbe Pei Gimel. Rabbi Chadakov has Nishimis. They printed the Mishpacha. Printed Rishimis from Rabbi Chadakov. Rabbi Chadakov was a secret. Rabbi Chadakov's whole mitzvah was secrecy. But they found small Rishimis by him. And one of the little Rishimis that they found, and they published it in one of the chudas of the Mishpacha, was that he writes on a date, says a date. The Rebbe told me today that the first time he saw the Friedrich Rebbe was Chalamoid Sukkos Tafresh Pegimel. That means 100 years ago, this past Sukkos. This was the second visit. The Rebbe came for Yud Shvat. He came for Yud Shvat. And the Friedrich Rebbe said the Maimorim that were the basis of the Rebbe's whole Messias. It's loiberdi. It's not zufällig. It's not coincidental that the Friedrich Rebbe chose to say the Maimor Basi Lagani, and it doesn't even start Basi Lagani. It started Betzvah Yemazeh. In the 2 Shabbos the Rebbe visited Rostov. So this is a milestone. If you want to know how this year is special, so I didn't make this up. I read it in other people's Rishimas. I'm sharing this with you. There's the 100th anniversary that the Rebbe said the Maimor Basi Lagani. Now the Basi Lagani has 2 parts. The Basi Lagani has 2 parts. The first part of Basi Lagani is what the job is, and the second part of Basi Lagani is who does the job. The first part of Basi Lagani is that there's a job of making this entire world into a Beis HaMikdash. Yidden were told to make Obayis, a house for the Eibishter. A tiny little building. In the Midbar it was a mobile house, and in Beis Elamim it was a permanent house. It's called a Mishkan, it's called a Mikdash. The Mishkan is also a Mikdash, the Mikdash is also a Mishkan. But the Eibishter says that's not enough. The Eibishter is not satisfied that he has a house on the mountaintop. Right? You know how the Eibishter lives. How the Eibishter lives. The Eibishter has no neighbors. The Eibishter has no neighbors. The closest tent to the Machon was a drop less than a Tchum Shabbos. The Eibishter lives by himself. He doesn't have neighbors. Why does he have neighbors? Because the neighbors don't behave. That's why he doesn't have neighbors. Yerushalayim is Chalkal Shvatim. People didn't really live in Yerushalayim. Whatever the Beis David lived in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was not a place for people to live. And the Eibishter wants neighbors. He wants to live amongst us. So he instructed us to build him a Beis HaMikdash, and we have an avodah to make our home, our life, our guf, our nechosim, our Beis into a Mishkan and Mikdash Le'Yizbarach. And that's why Basi Lagani is an instruction. It's a guide. It's a manual how you build a Beis HaMikdash out of your own life. And the Rav already mentioned, Azma mentioned, that says in the Maimed that you make a Mishkan and Mikdash Le'Yizbarach Adei Eskafia V'Yishapcha. That's how the Maimed goes. You struggle with the world, and if you're zoicha, you try. The Rebbe says a bit of times Lashon. Adei Eskafia Hamevi L'Dei Yishapcha. It's 2 steps. You struggle. We all struggle. The Rebbe mentioned what says in the Tanya that Titzadik V'Alti Rosha, right? So not everybody's a Madrega Titzadik, at least from Madrega V'Alti Rosha. But the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, nevertheless, from time to time, a person should be mishtad and do the Aveda of the Titzadik. V'kula hay v'ula yad Allah v'ruach mimoreh, but he'll be misabre beya nitzutz of a b'chinas ruach of Eizet Tzadik. He'll be nis'ale to the Madrega. It says in Tanya. Rabbi Yossi said, it says in Tanya, that a person does his kafia, but he does also sometimes avoid v'shapche. So the Maimer says you build a Beis HaMikdash Le'Yizbarach Adei Eskafia V'Yishapcha, and he gives you 3 examples. The Maimer gives you 3 examples. What does it mean to live in this world and not to avoid the world, but to struggle with the world and to try and make the world holy? He gives 3 examples. The first example is karbonis. Adam ki yaakov bekem karban lavaya min habehema. You sacrifice your own animal. And Yaakov, you bring your mensch clothes. The second example is to be mahapech shtus de liumaz, and to make it into shtus de kedusha, to transform the follow, the stupidity, the idiocy of the world into extremism for avodas Hashem. And the third example is that you take the sheker of Elam Hazeh and you make it to a kedesh and a kesher. So the Rebbe brings, it's 8 or 9 prakim. It's a half a maimer. The Friedrich Rebbe discusses what the task is. What is the job? The job is to make our life into a Beis HaMikdash. Just like the Eibishter told us to build a Beis HaMikdash in a particular place, we have an instruction to make our home, our life into a Mishkan and a Mikdash. Adei Eskafia, but it's half the mime. It's half. What's the second half? The second half is who does it. And who does it? The Tzivos Hashem. That's how the mime goes. The Tzivos Hashem. And the Rebbe emphasizes that in an army you have a king and you have generals and you have all kinds of officers, and then you have the foot soldier, the Ishchal Poshet. And the Rebbe says there's a lot of stuff going on in a war, and a lot of people making a lot of decisions, and the soldiers don't make any decisions. The soldiers do exactly what they're told, but the soldiers fight and win the war. The Ishchal Poshet, the common soldier, fights and wins the war. The avoida of Eskafia V'Yishapcha, to make this world the Mishkan Mikdash Le'Yizbarach, to bring Mashiach, falls to the Pashtiyid. That's what the Rebbe says in the Maimon. And he explains. I'm Pashat Chazing. I'm Pashat Yud Shvat darf man sagen, I'm Pashat Chazing a little bit of the Teichen of the Maimed, because that's how I think how you should start a Farbrengen Yud Shvat. So he continues, the Friedrich Rebbe does. And he says there's different kinds of war. Soldiers are fighting a war. And the soldiers are called Tzivos Hashem, yeah? But there's different kinds of war. The Friedrich Rebbe says different kinds of war. There's war that has measure. There's war that is fought with a certain reason, with a certain limitation. How much are you willing to lose versus how much you're willing to gain? It's called a milchama lishlel shalov alovas veis. When one nation wants to take what the neighbor has, nice people they're not, but al pi halacha it becomes, when a nation wins a war, halachically the spoils that they collect are theirs. That's the din. If a nation wants to take what another nation has, like the Gemara says, pishtu gedechem bigdud, you want to take what somebody else has, so you fight a war. But you have to ask yourself, how much is it going to cost? How much am I going to gain? If it costs more than you profit, it's not worth it. So when you're fighting Muhammad, that's called Lishdol Shalva, love is vice, make a cheshbon. What's it going to cost in lives? What's it going to cost in treasure? What is it going to cost in public relations? What is it going to cost in the infrastructure of the country? And you calculate, is it worth it? And if it's not worth it, you don't fight. But there's another kind of Muhammad. There's all the Maimon from the Friedrich Rebbe. And the second kind of Machon is called Melchemes Nitzachon. Melchemes Nitzachon. Melchemes Nitzachon basically means a war that you cannot lose. You can't lose. Because if you lose it, it's finished. There's nothing. A war that has to be won at all costs, that brings out of the Melech Midas HaNetzach, the desire for victory that's so strong that there's no limits. There's absolutely no limits. This war has to be won no matter what the cost. The whole Aricha is about Midas HaNetzachon, but the Friedrich Rebbe says there's different kinds of war. And there's a kind of war where there's no calculations, there's no considerations about cost, because it's survival. This war has to be won because the alternative you can't even think. Melchemes Nitzachon. So the Friedrich Rebbe says that when a king undertakes a Melchemes Nitzachon, he does things that are very out of character. He does things that he normally wouldn't do, even in war. Number one, he's mevazbeis kol ha'eitzreis she'otzru avesav avesav avesav. He takes treasure that he has collected and that his ancestors have collected for generations. And the Rebbe says this treasure is so precious that not only they don't dispense of it, they don't use it, they don't even show it to people. It sits hidden away and people don't even see it. And when a king is fighting a war, especially if it's a Melchemes Nitzachon, the king takes his treasure. Not only he shows it, he dispenses of it, he uses it in oifen of bizbuz, meaning he dispenses of it irresponsibly, recklessly. He sells it at half cost. The need to win is so strong that he takes treasure that in a different time he wouldn't even allow people to see it, and he gives it away chatzi chinam because he needs the resources to fight the war because he cannot lose. It's the first point. That a Melchemes Nitzachon, the king is dispenses of the treasure bizbuz. Bizbuz you could translate as recklessly, on a cheshbon. The second thing the Maimon says is machnis atzmei betachsisei milchama. Kings are usually busy with big things. The tactics of a battle are disturbed by the generals. The king decides if there's going to be a war, not how the war is fought. But when you're fighting the kind of war, which is literally life and death, it's a survival. So the king doesn't trust his generals and he personally engages in the tactics of war. He sets the strategy and he gets involved in the kind of details of a battle that kings never concern themselves with. But because it's a Melchemes Nitzachon, the king personally involves himself in every detail of the Milchama. He doesn't trust anybody. He personally oversees the tactics. The king becomes basically a general on the field. And the third thing the Maimon says is Mashlachai Meneged. If after like them, he throws away his own life. And the previous Rebbe brings all of these 3 points. That the Melchemes Nitzachon is Bevazvel Kol HaEitzres, Machnes Atzmei B'Tachsisei Milchama, and he's Mashlachai Meneged. The Rebbe said more than once, B'Negei to Yud Shvat, that we already had the Mashlachai Meneged. The Rebbe said about Yud Shvat. Derech Agav, for those who learned this year's Maimed from Tafshach of Gimel, the Rebbe makes a change. He doesn't say Mashachai Meneged, he says, Machnas Asmei B'Sakona. In the Maimed from this year, Tafshin Chav Gimel, which is parallel to page Yud Gimel, the Rebbe doesn't say he throws away his life. He puts his life at risk. He says, the Lashon, Machnas Asmei B'Sakona. But this is how the Maimed goes. Then, the Rebbe explains one of these three things. He has these 3 points, and he chooses to explain one of them, and this is really how the Maimed goes, almost till the end. He explains, Lahavin inyan ha'oitzer l'maylo. This is the arichis. He wants to explain what oitzer means. What does it mean? Yes. Spirit, a king has treasure. Everybody knows what treasure is. It's wealth. It's artifacts that have historic value, that have material value. What does it mean? A milchama, the klayachal, the Eibush that is fighting, that's a milchamas nitzachen. It means the word to bring Mashiach. That there should be a Jewish people. So blind my Yiddish folk against all odds. So what does it mean, oitzer? What does it mean in spiritual terms that the king has treasure and that the king dispenses of this treasure in a reckless way? That's the Shaila that Rebbe Lahavin, and he explains it at great length over many parakim. The Friedrich Rebbe does, and of course the Rebbe explains it as well. So the Nekude, again, I don't want to put you to sleep. I just want to make you be a little bit more relaxed. A bit so I'm not going to give you the whole nitty gritty of the mind. I just want to share the Nekude. The Rebbe wants to explain what does it mean that Hashem has treasure, that Eibishter has treasure? It's Tzaddik Shalom Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he doesn't show it. He doesn't show it because it's too precious. And when the Eibishter is involved in Mechamas Nitzachin, he not only shows the treasure, but he dispenses of it, the bizbuz. So the Rebbe begins by bringing a Tikkun Ezeiah. The Tikkun Ezeiah says, Ein Seif l'mayla adin keitzel l'mata adin tachlis. Ein Seif means godliness. Ein Seif doesn't mean the source of godliness. The source of godliness is Ein Tchila. Ein Seif means a lukus. Getlichkeit. And Ein Seif has two points, two characteristics. It's l'mayla adin keitz and l'mata adin tachlis. But the meaning of that statement, Ein Seif l'mayla adin keitz l'mata adin tachlis, is not that half of Ein Seif has one characteristic and the other half of the Ein Seif has a different characteristic. It means that each point in the Ein Seif is both l'mayla adin keitz or l'mata adin tachlis. Getlichkeit, godliness, Ein Seif is at each point always l'mayla adin keitz or l'mata adin tachlis. And the Maimer is a big arichis. It's very, very involved. But to say it in a simple sentence that everybody can understand, Ein Seif l'mayla adin keitz means no one has any idea what godliness is. And Ein Seif l'mata adin tachlis means everybody knows exactly what godliness is. That's the taichi. Ein Seif l'mayla adin keitz means what godliness is nobody knows. Ein Seif l'mata adin tachlis is what godliness is everybody knows. Now how could they both be true? If nobody knows, how does everybody know? There's a simple mashal. Chassidus. What is Chassidus? What's Chassidus? What's Chassidus? Everybody knows what Chassidus is. And no one has a clue. You sit down with a person, can you tell me, you're a chassid, ben chassid, ben shel chassid, what did the Baal Shem Tov bring into the world? So we have a lot of cliches. We have a lot of nice words. Even tev shebeketzer hamelech, the Mayan atzmei zal kumen nechutza. We have a lot of expressions. Shemen, Yerozen Sheberozen Shebetera. There's many different forms that are meant of Yechida. There's a lot of different ways. Bottom line is, what is Chassidus? And the truth of Chassidus is everybody knows what it is. Because when you see it, you know this is it. When you see a Chassidus Shayid, you know this is Chassidus. But what it is, where it comes from, how that person has that motivation, you don't have a clue. It's true. Chassidus is Ein Seif l'mayla adin keitz l'mata adin tachlis. It's the kind of thing everybody knows exactly what it is. Because they see that they see the paydas, they see what it does. And no one has a clue where it gets its power from. Where does Chassidus get its koyach from? I want to tell you a maisa. I love this maisa. I heard it from my Rosh Yeshiva. Rabbi Yossi Paltiel Farbrengen to the Tzelt Amal Farbrengen to Kislev. He was the Rosh Yeshiva Farbrengen to Kislev every year. So he told once a maisa. He was talking about Erev Achai. He told this maisa. This is a story. I think it's a gewaldige maisa. I think it's a very Chassidische maisa.
Soon it's going to be a meeting.
Okay, a minute. I need 10-minute notice and 5 minutes notice and 1 minute, and then I go 10 more minutes. He was the himself was a ilu. He had a very, very good head. He was a big masmid. So before he came to the Rebbe, was Netzisrael. And the different yeshivas, I think he learned by Rab Sheil, but there was a tkufa that there were a bunch of bachrim, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 bachrim. I think he said it was a Rishon L'Tzion, and they had no hanhala. They were on their own. They were sitting by themselves and learning. They were good boys. Charifim Sharfe Kepalach, they were very bright, and they didn't waste their time. They learned Torah all day. And they drank mashke all night. Midei laila b'laila. So it was Freilach, you understand, the Beis Hamed, they were boys. Chassidische Bachanim, gute Kapim, gelernt a ganze Tag Torah, but they were still boys. And boys will be boys, you know. So it was a shtibel. I think he said it was Ishn L'tzion, that they sat a whole day, and 3 times a day people came to daven, and I guess when people came to daven, they had to clean up and they had to behave. But when the people were not there, the shul was theirs, and they were learning, and they were playing. So he told us as follows. There was an Alta Bayana Chassid, as he told us. This goes back to the 50s, yeah? An Alta Bayana Chassid, an old Chassid Bayan is Ruzhin, who basically lived in the shul. He slept there. He has no idea how he had food, and who was supporting him, they didn't know. He Pashat lived in shul. He was an old Chassid, and he was obviously Achei Temimim. He wasn't a simple man. He says he never said a word to us. When we learned, he never interfered, he never discussed what we were learning. He was sitting the whole day doing his thing, learning, diving, doing his thing. When we threw chairs, he didn't bother us either. Whatever we did, he left us alone. But one thing, anytime we got up to dance, and they got up to dance more than once or twice, whatever he was doing, he danced with us. It was how this held. So imagine Bachrim in a shul, and they're good boys. And there's an old chassid watching boys being boys. When they learn, they scream at each other, which is a wonderful thing to do when you have enough vocal cords to scream at each other. It's not very helpful to scream at each other, but it's a minig, you don't listen to each other, you talk at each other. He didn't interfere. When they davened, he didn't bother them. When they commanded, but when they danced, he danced with them. And they were talking about, this is chayis. This is the Baal Shem Tov. It's a simple story, but it's a moiden de kamais. Who was this Jew? Who was this old Bayana Chassid? They have no idea. I have no idea. Ich stell sich vor, my imagination was that he Mistama came from the war. At Zebrach Erid, in all likelihood, he lost everything he had in the world. And he had Eibishter, das der gehad, had the Eibishter. And he had his gears to the Yankese. He had his visits to his rebbe. He had his Farbrengen with his Chavedim, Rebbe Shtetl, he lived in Europe. And now he's in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is whatever Eretz Yisrael is, and he's in a shtibel, and he's doing his own thing. He has his memories, he has his achrenes, and they're kids, Lubavitcher Bocharim, sitting in this medrash. But when they dance, he danced because this was his girs to the Yankese. This is how he lived. This gave him chayes. This really is Chassidus. Chassidus is Varmkeit, Chassidus is Lebendigkeit, Chassidus is oil, Chassidus is light, Chassidus is chayim, Chassidus is warmth. But where is the power? Where is the generator? Where is the torch that gives? Where does it come from? Where does the light come from? Where does the chayim come from? You learn 100 Maimorim. One Maimon says like this, another Maimon says like this. Chassidus is magic. Chassidus is alakus. Chassidus works. Tanya works. You sit down with a Yid, you learn a Perek Tanya, it changes him, not because the ideas were so brilliant, but because it's a lakus. It's a lakus. Chassidus is a lakus. And Chassidus is the kind of thing that everybody knows and no one has a clue. And that's how this Maimer goes. In Seif, Lamaila, Dein Ketz, Lamata, Dein Tachlis. If you want to understand Hashem's treasure, what is the Eibish's treasure? It's the idea that there's something called godliness. And on the one hand, everyone knows exactly what it is. On the other hand, no one has a clue what it is. And that is a tzaddik of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibush, this treasure, the way the Rebbe explains it this year in the Maimed, is the Ein Seif L'Mayla Ein Ketz. It's the idea of Chassidus that nobody knows. That's the Eibush's treasure. The Ein Sof L'Mata Dein Tachas, the idea of Chassidus, which we all know, that's not a tzaddik of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A tzaddik of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Ein Seif L'Mayla Ein Ketz. The idea of Getlachkeit was keine weiß nicht und keiner versteht nicht. No one knows what it is, but it works. This is the Eibish's treasure. And the Rebbe explains in the Maimer that when there's a Melchamas Nitzachim, the Melech, either the Melech is the Eibishter or the Melech is the Rebbe. It's not. It's emes. Gives the Eitzer, gives the aspect of Ein Seif that nobody knows, is given to the Anshe Chal Pshutim, to which Benatzeich and the Machon. This is the Maimer of Basi Lagani. This is the Maimer of Basi Lagani. And of course, the way the Rebbe teaches Basi Lagani, it's not a story. Basi Lagani is kamaise. Basi Lagani is not a nice story and a shena tere. Basi Lagani is a tzavah. I saw the Rebbe called it. It's a mandate. It's a mandate for us. The Rebbe took out of Basi Lagani everything for our generation. It's a milchama of nitzachin that requires a skafi of his hapche to be mahapech shtuz del yuma azeh, make it the shtuz the kedusha. And it's done by simple people, by us. There were Yidden in earlier generations, they went asach shener, asach beser, asach feiner, asach heliker, v'mir zenen. But this is given to the simplest Jews. We, with all of the tests that we have, and we continue to have, the Eibishter gave us the test, the avodah of bringing Mashiach, of making a diddle bara for the time des kafe ves hapche, and then the Rebbe says that you should know that the koiches that we are given by Rabbi Yossi were never given before. The Rebbe gives powers and koiches and capabilities and promise that you'd never had. I was sitting in class today and I was repeating the same thing I just told you. So one of the students says, so where do we see the Eitzer? Where is this treasure? Who's that with them Eitzer? Where do you see? The Rebbe says that since we are involved in this milchama, so the Mivaz is called, who's that with the Eitzer? So of course the simple answer is the Maimorim. And that Taka and Eitzer, we don't even begin to know what kind of Eitzer the Maimorim were printed in these years, in our generation. So I getracht, the Rebbe in the Maimer calls it Eitzer Shir Shamayim. Eitzer Shir Shamayim. So I told them a story, I told the students a story that I heard by Sima Rambam a year ago or 2 years ago here in Crown Heights, that a Yid had detailed, but I think there's a Vizhnitzer Rebbe who lives in London, if I'm not mistaken. And he used to live in London. He was very close to the Rebbe. And he was in Los Angeles, living in the house, staying by a Yid, Ish Amid, a Balabas. And he's going back to London. He says to me, I just want you to know, on the way back to London, I'm stopping in New York. I want to see the Rebbe. So he mentions to this Balabas, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so the guy gives a krecht, oi, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, oi, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Vus? Nothing. Vus? What does it mean? Lubavitcher Rebbe? Nothing. He was a Balabas, he was a frum Yid, but he was certain about Lubavitcher. Nothing. He says, come on, it wasn't nothing. That oi Lubavitcher Rebbe was not nothing. So he milked him, he wore him down. And he told him the following story. That he was ill. This man was ill. And he was hospitalized. And he had to go through a kind of procedure. He was in the hospital for a few weeks. Before he went into the hospital, he was Mediyah the Rebbe. He wasn't a Lubavitcher. But when you have problems, everybody knows the address. He was Mediyah the Rebbe that he's going to the hospital and he's not doing well. Anyway, his hospital was very far away from where he lived in Los Angeles. And his family used to schlep every day a very long distance, an hour and a half to spend time with him. And they would come in the morning and they would go home at night. Anyway, when he was in the hospital, he became mad. And he got distracted by something that's really stupid and foolish and childish and destructive, and he was going to burn the house down. He was going to run away from his family and go do whatever it was. Problem was, his family comes to see him every day. There was no opportunity to go away. They never loved him. They never came to spend time with him, and he had other plans. So he decided he could do it Shabbos. Because Shabbos they didn't come to him. They lived in LA. It was a far distance. Friday afternoon, the nurse comes into his room and says, there's a rabbi for you at the nurse's station. So he says to the nurse, you could transfer it to my room. And he can see that the nurse is very agitated. Whoever was on that phone really got under that lady's skin. And he says, you're going to that phone. And I'm not. No, she was very upset because on the other end of the line was a nudge of the highest caliber. So he gets out of bed and he goes over to the nurse's station. He goes, hello, it's Rabbi Chadachov himself. Your name is so-and-so? Yeah. The Rebbe said, I should tell you to go home today. Get your mind. Wow. So he says to the Rabbi Chadakov, he starts negotiating. I'm being dispatched Tuesday. And Rabbi Chadakov has a meltdown. You know how it is to work for the Rebbe? The Rebbe says, call this guy in LA. The Rebbe knows the Nocha Kodesh exactly where he is. He doesn't give you an address. He doesn't give you a phone number. Call every single name, Rabbi Chadakov called every hospital in the entire metropolis of Los Angeles looking for a man. Because all he had was a name. The Rebbe didn't tell him which hospital. I mean, the Rebbe could have told him, but then he wouldn't be the Rebbe. So Chadikov spent a Friday afternoon looking for this man. He finally finds him, and he's negotiating with him. So Chadikov says, the Rebbe told me that I have to find you and make sure you go home for Shabbos. I've been on the phone for hours. You're going home before Shabbos. He was very irritated. Anyway, it didn't take much. I mean, the Yid understood that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you don't fool. So he tells Chadikov, listen, I live 90 minutes out of LA. It's 2 hours to Shabbos. My family already went home. So Chadikov again tells him in a wonderful, pleasant voice, take a taxi, get him. And he went home. He went home for Shabbos. And as they say in the real world, that's the end of the story. Could you imagine a person should burn everything for a shtus? It's a hara, yeah. So this Rosh Hashiva who spoke at the Siyam Rambam tells the story, and he follows up. He says the Rebbe, the Rashi says in Chumash that by Yankov of Yosef HaTzadik, which you mentioned before, the Muz Yuknei Shalav of Nidrolei B'Chalein, Yosef HaTzadik sees the likeness of Yankov Avinu and Veistach, and he was afraid to an Aveda. He says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he goes along with the shluchim, he follows them around, you understand? And if they step out of line, he fixes them, you know. Shlichus, one of the miracles of Shlichus, you're like kids. You don't go on Shlichus when you're old, you go on Shlichus when you're young. 23, 24, 25. A lot of the shluchim are going to places where they're literally the only frum people for hundreds of miles. We don't appreciate what kind of pele this is. That they bleiben nicht not ehrlich. They bleiben chassidish. And they raise chassidish children. You know, a guy who's 60 years old and has lived his life, you send him to a midbar and you say he's ehrlich. But a boy of 24, 25 and everybody around him is different. And he doesn't mind being different than everybody else, and he raises his children to be different than everybody else, to be just like him, and it happens again and again and again and again. So I said to the kids in school, that's not the Eitzeh Sheyir Shamayim. That's not Lamaila Dein Ketz. It's a Pele Shein Kamoyu. It's a Pele Shein Kamoyu. The Rebbe gave koiches that in these unbelievable times we have access to Eitzeh Sheyir Shamayim. It's a madrega v'alakus that no one knows what it is, and it's a shmide. It protects us from kol davar ra and kol davar zar. Okay, it's the time to Rabbi Kalman Weinfeld said I have to make an interruption.
The Ali's Mirror, you're saying very short, behind Ali's Mirror.
Okay, the Rebbe taught Anim's Midas, I think, in Tafshan Chav Beis. And when the Rebbe taught Anim's Midas, he started. The Rebbe used to give mashke at 5 o'clock in the morning, Simchas Teda, to anybody who makes an increase in the Nigel Limit Chassidus. And in the middle of giving mashke, the Rebbe used to stop, and he would teach a niggin. He did this for 9 years, and in 1963, Tashach Avdalad, he taught 2 nigunim. So all told, the Rebbe taught 10 nigunim on Simchas Teda during 9 Yom Tovs. Tafshin Chav the Rebbe taught Adam Zmiris. When the Rebbe taught the niggin Adam Zmiris, the Rebbe said as follows. This niggin has an introduction and a story, and he said as follows. The Akdama is that the Alter Rebbe wrote a Nuschat Tefillah. The Alter Rebbe made his own text of davening. And the Alter Rebbe's Nuschat Tefillah, it says in the beginning of the Siddur, it's Al Pi Nusach Harizal. It doesn't say it's Nusach Harizal, it's Al Pi Nusach Harizal. The Alter Rebbe wanted a Siddur should be always gehalten Al Pi Diktuk, and Al Pi Halacha, and Al Pi Kabbalah. The Alter Rebbe wanted to bring together all the contradictions. So Alter Rebbe's Nusach is mesulas, is sifted from 60 nuschais. It's a very perfect, very exact nusach. So the Alter Rebbe decided what belongs in the Siddur and what doesn't belong in the Siddur. And one of the things which he disincluded from the Siddur is his mind, this midas of Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Chagav in the Rebbe's Rishimis, it's brought that the Rebbe Maharash would occasionally ask his children to sing this midas. The Polish is midas. Shabbos Bamtish, and he would say, Dr. Franshene Verte. The Rebbe Maharash, in the Siddur Lubavitch, you only have Azam B'Shvoch and Asad L'Stos and B'nei Cholim. Most Yidden have a whole series of midas that they sing by each Suda. And the Alter Rebbe didn't include it because it's not like, it's not what's called the Shara Koilo, the 13th gate. So the Rebbe said that there are certain pismayim that we do not say, but nevertheless, the Rabbeim bring them into Maimorim. That the Alter Rebbe has Maimorim where he brings lines, from Yigdal. Yigdal. The The Reb Chaim Vital doesn't like Yigdal at all. You have Yigdal is brought Mamad Chassidus. Mamad Chassidus a Pachad explain individual lines. Ein le Musaguf, ein le Guf. The Tzemach Tzedek said there should be ein le Guf and the Musaguf. As a whole husband, there's Mamad Chassidus that explain Pismoinim that we don't say. So the Rebbe said one of the Pismoinim that we don't say is the Shir HaKavod. Shabbos after Musaf is Anim's Midas. So the Rebbe said even though we don't say it, but it's brought in Chassidus. That was the Akdama. And then the Rebbe told the Maise. The Maise is that there was a Yid. No. There was a Chassidish Yid. The Chassidish Yid. There was a Chassidish Yid that he came to Shul Yom Kippur. And he got carried away with himself. He got bushed, he was in his own world. And in his Dveikus, he began to sing a nigun. And he sang the nigun, I guess the whole Yom Kippur, he sang the nigun. When Yom Kippur was over, or I forgot if it was at night, it was the next morning, the Gabbai Poshet wanted to go home. And this Yid was reeling his talis in his kittel, he was in another universe, singing a nigun, and the Gabbai had to wake him up and say, excuse me, sir, I need to go home up fast, and say, you have to stop. That's what the Rebbe said. I think it's all the Rebbe said. There was a Yid, in the Farbrengen, all the Rebbe said was there was a Yid, a very Chassidish Yid, who in Kippur was in a state of unbelievable lyhadus, and he was singing a nigun, and Yom Kippur ended, and he had no idea that Yom Kippur was over until they had to wake him up and tell him that they have to close the shul. And the nigun that he was singing was Anim's Midas. So the Rebbe gave the Hakdama, and he told the story, and then the Rebbe sang the nigun. When you talk about the idea of Machnas Asma, Tachsis and Machon, the king involves himself in the tactics of war. Kings don't involve themselves in tactics of war. Kings, Shalom Aleichem. Kings are busy with the governance. They're busy with everything. If there's a situation where there's a war, whether they desire it or they don't desire it, so it's delegated. The king has people who are trained and skilled and experienced who engage in Milchama. But when you have a Milchamas Nitzachon, where the king understands that this war you cannot lose, so he engages himself. Machnes atzmei betachsis Milchama. It's interesting to me. It's a taka shtik the pelle. But there's a good source for this. I think it's in the Rebbe's Zaydes Rishimis. The Rebbe's father was a Leivik. Reb Leivik's father, Gehesen, the Baruch Shnei Zalman. At birth, his name was Shnei Zalman. But he married a girl whose father was also Shnei Zalman. So he wasn't Baruch. But the Zalman became Baruch Shnei. He was the Rebbe's father, Reb Leivik's father, Gehesen Shnei Zalman. But when he got married, he took the name Baruch because his Shver's name was Shnei Zalman. Anyway, the Baruch Shnei was an Adam Gadol B'Yosef. He was the Leivik's tate. He was an Adam Gadol B'Yosef. He was Aniyim B'nei Tevim. I don't think he ever worked. The Rebbe Tamois gehalten. The Rebbe Rashav him gave Geld Fetzah. He was God Ag Hoip Nerid. Yudel Chitrik remembers him. Yudel Chitrik describes him sitting on a train, a Freilich. He was a Chassidish Yid. And he says, no, we're sitting on the train. So much a Chazer Amayim Chassidus. So we got a Maimon Chassidus, I say, off the top of their heads. See Chazer Amayim Chassidus. Waits 15 minutes. No, we're sitting on the train. Chazer Amayim. Hadi Chazer Amayim Chassidus. The Bleivik's father, the Baruch Shnei. He was in Lubavitch quite a bit. He got married a second time in Lubavitch. He was very close to the Rebbe Rashab. He was older than the Rebbe. They were first cousins. First cousins once removed. They're very close. It was Adam Gadol. And I believe he wrote the Rishimis. He wrote a journal which he gave the Friedrich Rebbe that's been published. The Rishimis Haravash, you could buy it. It's very, very interesting. And very interesting. There's mentions of the Rebbe as a little boy. And one of the most interesting part of this Rishim is a description of what the Rebbe Rashab was saying during World War I. There's some very interesting details over there that are not printed anyplace else. He was in the house by the Rebbe Nishmaseiden, and he heard things, and he wrote them all down that are not in Teres Shalom, they're not printed anyplace else. But one of the things that I think it's written there, I'm not sure. My memory is not what it was. I think it's there that the Rebbe Rashab said, the Russians were fighting with the Germans on the Eastern Front. The Rebbe did not want the Germans to overrun Russia. He wanted Russia to remain Russian. In other words, anti-Semitic, but frum. He certainly did not want Russia to become communist, but at that time that was not on the table. He didn't want the Germans to defeat the Russians. He wanted the Russians to win. The same thing with Alter Rebbe and Napoleon. You can read the Lashenus and the Sichas. So the Rebbe Rashab said, I hope the king himself will get involved in the tactics of war. The king hastened Nikolai. And he was an inbred fool. He was a typisch Kolatipschen. What was gewusst? People knew he was a fool. And Mestame, the Rebbe Rashab also knew. And the Rebbe Rashab says, I hope he gets involved in the war. And he explained why. Not because he's smarter than the generals, but he brings along a bigger malach. And the Rebbe says, I hope he'll get involved in the war, he'll bring a bigger malach, and there'll be an opportunity, a chance, that the Russians will defeat the Germans. Now the end of the story was he got involved, and they lost anyway. But this word that the Rebbe Rashab said, I hope the Kesed, the Tsar, gets involved in the Machon, because he brings a bigger malach. He's the melech. So this is a mashal gashmi for Machla Havl in Klipel, Havl Elf Havdolas, Machlis is Atzmi B'tachsisei Machon. The Rabbeim, the Friedrich Rebbe and the Rebbe. The Rebbe Tamal gesagt of sich, the Friedrich Rebbe said out himself, Karmi Shalila Natarti. You know, Karmi, the Shir HaKerem. In Sefer Yeshaya, there's a shir, a poem. It's one of the Asara Shirim. From Yeshaya HaNavi. And it's a story about a man who has a kerem. He has a vineyard. And you have to be misakel, you have to remove the stones, and you have to remove the weeds, and you have to take care of the kerem. And he's busy taking care of somebody else's. He's going off to find somebody else's problems and he's fixing them. And his own kerem, he neglects his own vineyard. He neglects his own kerem. So it's a mashal. The mashal is, was geist the zuchem bayenim, ksheit atzmech atchila, this is it's the beginning of Yeshaya. It's a nevuah where Yeshaya Hanavi is describing the Baal HaKerem, and he's supposed to be looking after his own kerem, and instead he's busy helping everybody else. And Karem Yishalei Netati. The Friedrich Rebbe said of himself, Karem Yishalei Netati. I'm a Chabad Rebbe, and Chabad Rebbe is supposed to speak Chabad Chassidus. And Chabad Rebbe is supposed to speak Avedas Hashem al derech Chabad. Und mit was vernehm sich mit Nikvetare, mit Tenekisho Besraban. What was he busy? He was busy with those things that should have been done by Balabatim, should have been done by Rabbonim, but not by the Rebbe. But this was the Tzav HaShah. This is what the hour required, and this is what the Rebbe did. This is Mamish, the Machnes Atme B'Tachsis and Mechama. But let's talk about America, because that's what's near to us. The Rebbe came here, the Friedrich Rebbe came here, the Rebbe came here. Mit was hat sich vernommen? What was the Friedrich Rebbe busy with? He was busy with talks and tales, mit Schmussen, mit Kinder and Jugend, with magazines for little children. He was busy with Unser Buch, to teach children how to read and write in Yiddish. He was busy with the Rebbe wrote a curriculum. Our Rebbe wrote a curriculum. They found it. They printed a curriculum, grade 1 till grade 8, a curriculum, what the children should learn in the first grade, what the children should learn, a whole curriculum. The Rabbeim haben sich hereingelegt in Sachen, was bechlal nicht gewinnt sehr in America especially. The Friedrich Rebbe, who Gufe was unbelievably inhibited. Begashmis, he was so limited, came to this country, and I heard from people who remember, the moment he rolled off that ship, he didn't give himself a second to catch his breath. He was stuttering, he had no people, and had no money, and no connections, and no nothing. Aber had getummelt. America has to be what the old country was. Yiddish, first of all, the only thing that matters is Yiddishkeit. And second of all, besides for Yiddishkeit, there's nothing. That was his dream, that was his vision, his wish. And he busied himself with Teneki Shobes. The Friedrich Rebbe got involved with the chinuch of little kids. You know how many kids were in the whole of Lubavitch Yeshiva? They fit in one picture against the far wall of the upstairs of 70. 25 kids, 30 kids, and that's what he did. The Friedrich Rebbe, right? He said Chassidus, didn't say Chassidus. He said a little Chassidus. But what was he doing in America? He's worrying about the chinuch of Teneki Shobes. And you read the stories, and you hear the anecdotes, you hear what happened. One Sunday morning, he says, one Sunday morning, the Friedrich Rebbe called in the Manal of the yeshiva, and said, I want you to go to the Talmidim and ask each Talmud to give you an hour-by-hour account what they did from the time they left yeshiva Friday afternoon until they came yeshiva Sunday morning. That's 12 hours, it's 24 hours, and another 12 hours, and another 8 hours. It's 36 plus 8 is 44. They should give an hour-by-hour reckoning. Was dem Agetan for the Amerikaner Beitschikis. You understand? Friday afternoon, we played baseball. Friday night, we had a good bull session. Shabbos Bam Tish, he wanted an hour-by-hour account of what they did. And it wasn't beautiful. And every boy had to write a duch, and the Rebbe wanted to see it. Now, the Rebbe didn't make any comments. He didn't have to make any comments. He just said to the Rosh Yeshiva, next weekend, see to it that their hours are spent more responsibly. Imagine the Friedrich Rebbe, and you're not talking about a yeshiva with 1,000 kids. It was 12 boys. 20, but it was nothing. But he put himself into these little kinderlach because the Rebbe understood that the future of America depends on this. And the idea that the Rabbeim spent exorbitant amounts of time and koiches on things that traditionally were done by a malamed adiki, a school teacher. The Rebbe himself was concerned with these things. The Rebbe said once in a Farbrengen, that the Friedrich Rebbe said to him, or he said to someone, I cannot go to sleep until they put the talks and tales into the mail for a boy in Australia. There's a Yid who lives in Yerushalayim, and his name is Uri Kaplun. He is a grandson of Vidik Hasen, the Mesha Zalman Feiglem of Hashem, who the Rebbe called the Avraham Avinu of Australia. So Uri Kaplun wrote a biography of his grandfather. It's called Avraham Avinu. It's a beautiful book, and he writes nicely. It's in English. It's a good read. It's really worthwhile. It's such a remarkable story. You read it, you don't even see how remarkable it is. So Uri Kaplun writes that the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen once that the Friedrich Rebbe said he cannot go to sleep till they put in the mail one issue of Talks and Tales to one boy in Australia. And Rabbi Kaplun writes, I know that story is true because I was that boy. He was a little boy. This is the late 30s, the early 40s, I'm sorry. And the Friedrich Rebbe said, did you put in the mail the Talks and Tales for the one kid in Australia who was going to read Jewish kosher literature rather than the Treifa literature the older children were reading? And the Rebbe said, can I schlafen? The dedication of the Rabbeim to things that are bechlal not in Yonam, because this is the Taich Machnus and the Rebbe. You should know for every story we know, there's 100 stories we do not know. The Rebbe was not a makif. The more you hear, the more you can't believe it. The Rebbe was involved in the shlichusen of individual shluchim on a day-to-day basis, not only in the 50s and 60s, in the 70s and 80s. The Rebbe was involved in the decision that small shluchim in small shetalach made, and mamash on a day-to-day basis. He showed an interest, and he engaged a small shliach in a small shtetl, made a Shabbos. The Rebbe wanted to know about it, and he read about it, and he asked questions about it. And we're slowly hearing, not the big stories we know, but the idea that the Rebbe concerned himself with the individual activities of a particular shliach in a tiny place, because to the Rebbe, this was Muhammad's Nitzachon. And there was nothing too small. There was nothing too small for the Rebbe to personally engage in. Now, I want to talk to something. Okay, this is Achei Temimim. And God should forgive me for saying something which is very terrible. I actually did that terrible thing. I prepared what I want to talk about. Okay, and I want to talk about chinuch. I want to spend a few minutes talking about chinuch. The Rabbeim, the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Rebbe were Meisei Nefesh for chinuch. Were mamish Meisei Nefesh for chinuch. The amount of time the Rabbeim gave to this. The story with Sivas Hashem, where for years the Rebbe would meet kids as often as once a month and stand in shul while all the kids were playing around. They was like, come on, David. and talk to them like as if they're soldiers in an army, and they're all listening. And some of the kids are sitting in the front and trying to write what the Rebbe says. The other kids don't know what's flying. And the Rebbe gave mazefu koiches for Tzivus Hashem. Mamish, in the early years of Tzivus Hashem, the Rebbe met the children once a month, and he talked to them. The kids weren't listening, but the Rebbe was talking to them. And the Rebbe obviously understood that they're hearing, the neshama had. The Rebbe was so concerned with chinuch. So I want to speak to chinuch for a few minutes. I want to speak to chinuch because if you want to talk about the Rebbe, and I guess you could say this true also the Friedrich Rebbe, in the Inyanim Evachazem, the things which were the most important to the Rebbeim. The Rebbe should have been busy. The Rebbe told once the Bella eunuch, "Mein Inyan is verenfern Ashven Rambam." The Rebbe said, "My business is to verenfern Ashven Rambam." He did that also, but that he did like Ibein Haimish Besoyim. You understand? Between his Iker and Yoneh, which was concerning himself with Aleph Beis, Mamish Kipshute with Aleph Beis, and Kometz Alefo, and Mikveh Tar, and Chinuch Ataras HaKodesh. I want to speak about Chinuch. The Rebbe gave so much time to the idea of Chinuch. Chinuch meant Hodem and Yiddish Kinder. You have to raise your children. And it's something which Bichlal is always a topic that should be talked about. The Rebbe talked about always Simchas Torah, he talked always on Shavuos, but it's an appropriate topic about Yud Shvat. Chinuch and Yiddish Kinder. It's something that has to be said and has to be said and has to be said and has to be said. The Nakud is as follows. In the old country, the street raised your child. The street in the shtetl was so pure that the street raised your child. A Yiddish kid grew up in a Jewish home. He walked outside in the street, all he saw was Kiddush and Tana. By his neighbor, by his friend, by his family. So the involvement of the parents, and even the involvement of the Melamed, did not have to be with such attention to detail, because the child was surrounded by Kiddush and Tara. The child was surrounded by everything holy. The street was holy. I've heard that there's places in Eretz Yisrael where it's like that now, or it used to be like that. But it's not that way here. The Rebbe spoke about this many, many times. In America, the street is treif redt man nicht. Was tut sich in Stub, you know what I'm saying? The street is not kosher, we all understand. And we send our children to school, and they're sitting on the bus, and they're sitting in classrooms. The tests that the children face, and the hardships that the children deal with, the exposure to all kinds of tests that in the shtetl simply did not exist. And the answer to this, Rabbi Yossi, the answer to this is very intense chinuch. Everybody is very worried about the children's mental health, and it's a good thing. Children have to be mentally healthy. And we're so worried about their self-esteem and worried about them being happy. And too many of us are afraid to say a word. And the kids grow up and they're spoiled. They're nachigebene. And they have a lot of self-esteem. But self-esteem doesn't necessarily mean that they have good self-image. It means they have a lot of chutzpah sometimes. They're very selfish. It's very important that our children should be healthy. I'm not saying that you can abuse children. But we have to raise them. And raising children means we can't assume that they'll figure anything out by themselves. A child does not know how to wash negavas unless you show him. A child does not know how to say meidani unless you show him. A child doesn't know that when he comes out of the bathroom, he has to say Achei Temimim unless you teach him. And a lot of times, we just assume they know. Why? I know, so of course he knows. It's not so. Children know nothing. And children need to be taught everything. And it's so critical for parents to approach the chinuch of their children with a sense of, the truth is, unbelievable urgency, unbelievable intensity, but if you show urgency and intensity, you'll make your kids crazy. So you have to keep that all inside. But there needs to be the idea that you pay attention to every little detail. And every child at a different age is in a position to learn different things. And different children age differently. If you can't bring your child to show because you can't sit still, you don't bring your child to show. When the child is able to come to shul, there's an expectation. He sits next to his father and he davens. I listens to Kriyas HaTorah, and you together with your balabasta. It's not a 2-man job. It's a 100-man job. But this is for sure. If you and your wife are not going to agree about chinuch, it's going to be a disaster. Midaf hodev in the kinder. The simple statement is, the children are not going to be elech and frum because they're living in an elech and a frum kehila. I am sorry. Our children are going to be elech and frum because we demonstrate to them that we personally care very much that the little details of Yiddishkeit are important. A child is playing and his yarmulke falls off. You don't have to scream at the kid. You don't have to hit the child. But the child has to know that you care. That his yarmulke fell off his head. He'll never forget it. Kol yemei chayav. It's a little thing. A child walks by his friend, and his friend has a bag of chips, and he gets permission from his friend. He puts his hand into the bag, he pulls out 3 chips, and he pops them into his mouth, and he doesn't make a bracha. It's a little thing. And again, you don't want to get upset, you don't want to get angry, but you want to be mesim lev. The Eibishter gives us children, gesundheit, and we should know how big a bracha it is. It's the biggest bracha in the universe. The biggest bracha in the world is children. It takes us our whole lifetime until we're out of pfeifers, was kennen nicht gehen, kennen nicht reden, kennen nicht trachten, to see, this is not yin game. Jiddische Reichtum is nicht Heiser und Geld. Jiddische Reichtum is Kinder und Kindskinder. The greatest bracha we have is the children that Eibishter gives us. And we have to raise them. We must teach them how to be Jewish. We must teach them how to be Jewish. Each child at each step of his development, parents, a father and a mother together, they sit and they think it through. They try different things with the child. You try something with your child, like you say to the child, take negelvasa, and then you see that the child is not old enough because he spills it out. So you wait 3 months and you try again. But every step of the way, we raise our children. We show our children how to daven by example. We take them to shul. Shul is not a playground so mothers could sleep Shabbos morning. I'm sorry for speaking divrei kfira. This is how I believe. If a kid can't sit still in shul, in my opinion, he stays home. And you say to your little boy and little girl, this is an idea that I tell many people, and it's a simple fact of life. The way chinuch works is that everything you tell your child is at an age where he doesn't need to know it yet. In other words, just like you hear the tradition that a boy is 2, 3, 4 years old and his mother tells him that when you're going to be a big boy, you're going to go to yeshiva and you're going to become a Talmud Chacham. And the kid tells, I'm going to be a Talmud Chacham. He has no idea what the Torah is. He has no idea what Talmud Chacham is. But his mother told him he's going to be a big boy. He's going to go to yeshiva, Talmud Chacham, and he's already in his own imagination a Talmud Chacham, and his mother sings to him, like the Rabbi Yossi by the Farbrengen, Torah is the best eschere. The Rebbe used to give an example for this idea that many Yisrael Torah. So one of the examples that I would bring is that the mother used to sing to the children lullabies. Torah is the best eschere. Every stage in chinuch is about you teaching your children what they need to know before they need to know it. Meet Machon. You have a little maid there, and she needs to learn about tznius, which is a big nisayon. You don't tell her about tznius when she's 9. When she's 2.5, when she's 3, that you're going to grow up and you're going to be as pretty as Queen Esther, and you're going to wear clothing like Queen Esther, because you're a Yiddish meidele, and a Yiddish meidele needs to dress tznius, and she kwels nachas. Oh, I'm going to be Queen Esther. And when she becomes a little older and it becomes a real issue, it's already in her mind established that this is how she is. And here's the key. There's no fight. There's no fight. When parents are raising their children and they're fighting with them, they already missed the boat. If you want your child to listen to Kriyas HaTorah, the Machon, and he doesn't want to, the reason is because you introduced him to Kriyas HaTorah when he needed to listen to Kriyas HaTorah. That's not how it goes. You don't tell a child you're going to shul when he's the age of going to shul. You tell him he's going to shul 2 years before. And you say, when you're going to be big, and you're going to be able to sit next to your father, you're going to sit next, you can go to shul, and you can sit next to Tati, and Tati's going to have a siddur, and you're going to have a siddur, and Tati's going to daven, and you're going to daven. And when the child is old enough to go to shul, he goes to shul because he knows about shul from an age where he had no resistance. He He had no fight. He had no issue with it. So when he becomes of age, it's a natural progression. He goes to shul. And the same is true in every union. You want your child to listen to Kriyas HaTorah, you don't tell him, from now on, listen to Kriyas HaTorah. No. You tell him before. You think you listen to Kriyas HaTorah? Let's try. You can't go outside for Kriyas HaTorah, you come back from Muslim. And in a month from now, when you'll be big, you'll listen to Kriyas HaTorah. I'll give you an example which is a bit uncomfortable, but it's also a very, very real example. Today, a lot of parents struggle with taking their children to the mikveh, the boys, to the mikveh. How do you take your boy to the mikveh? You tell him before. Not when he's old enough to go to the mikveh. He knows before he's going to be big, he's going to be like Tati, he's going to go to the mikveh. And then when he becomes that age, it's not a push-it. He already hears about it, he knows about it, he understands what it is to some extent, and he goes to the mikveh. Every stage in chinuch is this way. And when the kids get older, they become adolescents, they become teenagers after bar mitzvah, it's the same thing. Whatever you need your children to know, they hear about in their home before. In other words, it's a lakus bepshitas, it's bepashtas. But in order for this to happen, you and your wife have to consider the most important thing in your life, the chinuch of your children. But if this is how I describe it. Every family, every mishpacha, shtub, every home has a conversation that goes on from the moment the couple gets married until till days. This conversation is, to a great extent, certainly in the earlier years of a marriage, steered by the parents. What you talk about when you're in a car going to a trip, what you talk about at your Shabbos table, what you talk about at the Shabbos, a regular weeknight dinner, is a conversation that parents need to direct. And parents need to always not make it so intense that the children feel stifled. You talk about regular things, talk about fun things, and so on and so forth. But the parents always go back to Inyanim of Yerushalayim. At every opportunity, the children hear about frumkeit. And they, like I said before, they don't hear about the frumkeit they need to know now. They hear about the frumkeit they need to know tomorrow. So when they become that age, it's a davar apashit. This is called chinuch. And chinuch is a responsibility. And the chinuch doesn't happen by mistake. You don't raise good kids because you had mazel. Everybody needs to the shmaya. We need to the shmaya on a break. But one of the biggest mistakes you could say is it's not up to me. It's absolutely up to you. It's not up to you only, but it's up to you. So when you're raising your children, you and your wife have to make it ikrim kala ikrim at every opportunity that the children should know what's the most important thing to you. You should know, I have a grievance against my father. What's the grievance? When I was a kid, I wanted to go on trips. We always went on trips. Like, it's based on Chalamay Sukkis, Chalamay Pesach, 2:30, 3 o'clock. The zoo closes at 5. The trip is an hour. We left house 2 o'clock. What's our trip at Mishin Gahat? Everybody else was out of the house at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we were Rekayim Mitzvah Schlepp, B'deraisim, B'derabbonin, like all the Shittis, B'hidde. I remember once supposed to go on a trip. My father sat down to learn Tanya. And I was so angry with him. But he learned his Tanya and he finished his Tanya, and I was angry. I probably physically pushed him, so he wanted to go home. Anyway, I said, we're finally ready to go on the trip. He said, to learn Tanya. So he told me straight, it's important for you to know that it's not that important. That's what he told me. Now, I'm not saying you should do that to your children. I'm not saying the children is a different generation. The children are much more sensitive. I'll get sued for being mentioned. But this is chinuch. Chinuch means father and mother know it's good that the children should wear nice clothes. It's good that the children should eat good food. It's good that the children should have a beautiful bedroom and they should have nice things and everything like that. But it's not as important. It's not nearly as important as Teirah and Mitzvahs and Yiras Shamayim. And this we give our children in every minute of our day and our night. We give it to them in our words. We give it to them in our actions. We give it to them in our attitude. When the children see our Yiras Shamayim. I grew up with a mother who on average benched 2 or 3 times after each meal. She drank a cup of water. Did they make a ben nefashos? She made 1 ben nefashos, 2nd ben nefashos. That's how I grew up. I also make ben nefashos 2 or 3 times after a cup of water. It's a big aveda. It's like a baruch shein. But this is what I remember. The earnestness and the seriousness of Yiddishkeit. We live in America, and Baruch Hashem, We're not living in America of the 1940s and even the 1950s and 60s. I'll tell you a story. I think it's a Gavaldik Maisa. It's a long, detailed story, and I'm telling the whole story to pick on one little nuance. The story is that once a month, every month for maybe 30 years, or close to 30 years, the Anhala of the yeshiva would go into the Rebbe Yechidus on the Chassidus. The Rashag, who was the Rebbe Shvagir, would go into the Rebbe together with Anhala Gashmis and Ruchnis and talk in Yoni HaYeshiva. Once every 4 months, they would be joined by the Anhala from Montreal. Who was the Anhala from Montreal? The Peilishe, Rabbi Kramer Alav Shalom, Rabbi Hendel Alav Shalom, Rabbi Guinness Alav Shalom, and I think the Peilishe, these Derusha. So they came to Montreal first. They were Anhala. Every 4 months, when the Anhala went into the Rebbe, they would also go in. So one day, Rabbi Hendel walks into the Beis Medrash. It's a Chassidus. And he goes up to Simcha Zirkin, who was unfortunate now, Allah Shalom, and he says to him, "You got to take us to New York." If you know Simcha Zirkin, you don't tell him what to do. He says, I don't have to do anything. He says, "No, we have to go." Why? He tells him the truth, that every 4 months, Anhala from Montreal joins Anhala from New York, go into the Rebbe. We have a regular driver, and the driver got sick. We need to get to New York now. So he negotiated. I'm sure he took good care of himself, whatever the negotiations were. Maybe it wasn't financial. He made sure that he got something for it, and he took him. Anyway, they come to New York. The Yechida starts at 9 and it goes till 10. It's an hour. Simcha Zirkin is sitting in Gan Eden Tachna on a bench, on an old wooden bench. Those wooden benches were made for one reason. For those who don't remember the old benches of 770, they would push it, splinters glued together, waiting to be unsplintered into your Huizen. The whole bench was splinters. I have a lot of stories with those splinters. 770 benches. It's part of the history of 770 was the splinters. It's very important. You had to get a shtech from 770. Anyway, he's sitting on one of those benches. The door opens and Hala walks out. All of them. And he goes to his car. He has to drive back to Montreal. As soon as they walk out of the Rebbe, he sees there's something's not right. Anyway, they go on 770, they get into the car. Rabbi Hendel sitting in the front. I think it was maybe just three. Greenglass and Kramer and Hendel, maybe just three. And they're sitting in the back. And no one says a word. Not only no one says a word, they don't want to make eye contact. They don't want to look at each other. Anyway, Simcha Zirkin is driving. It's a long trip. And no one says a word because became a shooter. Anyway, after 2 hours of driving, he pulls into a rest stop and he parks the car and he says, "Hetz Chaim Yidin. I'm going out of the car to the Beis HaKavod. I just want you to know that if you're going to sit like this for the next 6 hours, you're going to sit in this parking lot, I'm not taking you. I can't take this. What's this business?" They're sitting in the car. They're not only not changing words. They're not making. It's like as if you have 3 corpses, 3 cadavers. Anyway, he goes through what he has to. He comes back and says, "Sitzen." He sits down and they need that food, and he says, "Nein, before we're not moving." Anyway, so after a long time, Rabbi Hendel says, "Go, I'll tell you." So they go in, and Hendel tells them what happened. They went into the Rebbe, had a Yechidus, and at some point in the Yechidus, there was quite a few Anhala members. I don't know how many it was, I don't know who they were. But somebody in the Anhala started to speak with the Rebbe politics. What that means, for those who don't understand what politics means favoritism. A Rebbe is a Likus. And a Rebbe is in charge. And a Rebbe, you do exactly what he says. And a Rebbe, you don't give advice. He was giving the Rebbe advice. Why was he giving the Rebbe advice? He had an interest. He either liked somebody or didn't like somebody. So he was sort of explaining to the Rebbe that the Rebbe really wants to do what he thinks. And it wasn't the first time that the Rebbe was given eitzes like this. So the Rebbe interrupts him. Doesn't let him finish. And the Rebbe said, "B'chlal, bin ich sich mishtadel zu fühlen sich als Rebbe Shvat. So I try to do everything like the Rebbe Shvat, the feeling Rebbe did. My whole approach to Messias is I follow the way the Rebbe behaved, that's how I behaved. He says, in 3 ways I'm different than the feeling Rebbe. In 3 Wegen bin ich als Rebbe Shvat. He says, number 1, ich hab Geld. Feeling Rebbe had no money. He says, if I need, I can have, this is the 1970s, early 70s, I can have tonight on this table $5 million in cash. Als ich darf, habe ich Geld, the Rebbe said. Number 2, der Rebbe Shvat hat gewollt machen von Amerika Machon Teire. Und hat es nicht sicher gewesen zu sein. Ich bin das ja sicher zu sein. The Frierdiker Rebbe wanted America to be a place of Teire. Not a place where people learn Teire, a place of Teire. And he did not merit to see it. I see it. And then the Rebbe says, when the Rebbe Shvat gehat mit them zu reden, ich habe mit them zu reden. The Frierdiker Rebbe had people they could talk to, meaning they would not. You learned Rambam today, yeah? Today we start Hilchas Ritzeach, right? There's 2 mitzvahs in Hilchas Ritzeach, which again call Atera Kula. Leisech al Adam. What's the second one? There's the evil sit in Machon. Nicht verdrehen ihre Makop. The Shveriga had mentioned you can speak to people and they're not going to have days. They're just going to listen. I have no one to talk to. And that's how the Yechidus ended. That was the end. That was the Pasuk. So that's why they walked out like that. So the Rebbe said 3 things. The Rebbe had no money and I have money. The Rebbe wanted to see America as a Machon Teire. He wasn't zecher to see it and I'm zecher to see it. And the Rebbe had people to talk to and I don't. Now, everybody tells a story. The most important part of the story is the punchline. But I don't think so. The second part, the Rebbe Shvat hat gewollt sein, as America sein am Machon Teire und hat nicht sehr gewinnt zu sein. I want to explain to you the Pnimius Shabbat David. This is, it's important. It's not a get chinuch, but it's important. People learn Teire in America. And there were goyim in America in the 1910s and 1920s that are bigger than many of the Rosh Hashivas today. People learned Teire, but America was not a Machon Teire. And the people who studied Teire were not B'nai Teire. They were students. Almost every yeshiva in America, not saying all, Bachim sat and learned, and they prepared themselves to go to college. It was an accepted part of the yeshiva life. There were 2 types of yeshivas. The yeshivas that were college prep, that was not college prep, but the Rubam Kekulam, the way a yeshiva bacher looked. A yeshiva bacher did not look like a yeshiva bacher. He looked like an American who's studying Talmud. This was true not just in the 40s. It was even true in the 50s, and it was even true in the 60s. Meaning to say there was a lot of yeshivas, there was a lot of Teire, but it was America. The way people saw themselves, even people who were B'nai Teire, it's different than in Europe. It's a subject, it's a limud, it's a academic thing. The idea, what they call in the culture, the black hat. What's the black hat? What's the black hat? The black hat is Yeshne Am Echad. I am different. Yeshne Am, but I'm different, we're different. The black hat in the 50s and the 60s, you had people who sat and learned all day and all night, but they looked like Americans because they were Americans. The idea that we're not Americans, we're Yidden, took a very long time to break through. In the 70s, you began to see, today, wherever you look, Charedim and Charedim, Yidden are frum, Yidden are ehrlich, and to a very great extent, me had the Welt in Bud, mamish. Me pfeift of the ganze Welt. Our life is Teira, our life is Yira, we have Nisfyonis. Und der not helfen. But we're Yidden l'chatchila. It wasn't that way even in the 60s. You began to see all over America that the yeshiva bacher doesn't just study Teira, he looks like a yeshiva bacher. And he thinks like a yeshiva bacher. Thinking like a yeshiva bacher means my business is Teira. Do I have to work to support my family? Maybe I have to work. My life is Teira. Rather than this is something that I'm doing for a year or for 2 or for 3, but in a way that's part of a life that has other priorities, other interests. This is what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe Shvat hat gewollt sein am Melech and am Machon Teire. The Frierdiker Rebbe saw yeshiva bachrim. But the Rebbe wanted what we call a lakus b'pshitas. The Rebbe wanted the attitude of Ha'el Chayid is Kehem Chayim. My life is Teda Vaveda. It took a long time for Frume Yidden, Elach Yidden, Charedi Yidden, to stop needing to be in both worlds, to stop needing to please America. It's a long time ago. It's 50 years ago, it's 60 years ago, it's 70 years ago. But it took a long time for Frume Yidden to say, I don't care what America thinks. I'm a Yid and this is it. And that's what the Rebbe meant when he said, the Rebbe gewollt sein, Amerika sein, Machon Teda, or it is nicht zecher gewesen sein. In the early 70s, he says, ich bin der zecher sein. And I think he meant then. Wherever you look, there's Teda, and it's Teda v'yira. It's not Teda with cheshbonos. It's real. It's real Teda. I'm sorry, I digressed. Okay, we want to raise our children like this. We want to raise our children that this is, our whole life is Teda and Yiddishkeit, Chassidus. And we have to understand that it's not going to happen by itself. I davened for many years by the police station. Rabbi Reuben, so I'm lifting an Aiden. He lived on Montgomery here. And he was an interesting Jew. He was a Yid caught in a time warp. He could have lived in Sanz, the time of the Derech Chaim, would have been very comfortable. He was a very interesting Yidl. And I spent a lot of time with him. He was very nice to me. We spent a lot of hours schmoozing. And he was telling me once, he was complaining. Chinuch. The Hodev and the Kinder. We give our children what's important to us. And for some parents, what's important to us, they should have a lot of fun. Why? Because they feel like when they were children, they didn't have any fun. For some parents, they give their children that they shouldn't be stressed out by school. Why? Because when they were children, they were stressed out by school. Some parents, everybody has their cheshbonos, right? My children are not going to go through what I went through. Everybody says that, and they end up being worse than their parents. But that's a detail, yeah? My children are not going to, fine, your children do not have to go, but that doesn't exempt you from raising them. You don't raise Jewish children by protecting them from abuse. You have to protect them from abuse, and you have to raise them. And raise them means you have to teach them. You have to teach them Yiddishkeit at every stage. The most important part of the teaching is you and your wife's own conduct. The most important part of the teaching is they see how Shabbos looks, and they see how Pesach looks, and they see what it means Daled Minim, they see what it means the Sukkah, they see how important these things are to you. They see what a hechsher is, you know what it means? You eat any food, you go into any restaurant, it's kosher. The children learn from what we teach them. The Rebbe said this many times. America is different than the old country. You cannot expect your children to learn anything by themselves. You have to teach them everything. And you have to do it with that name, with that shalom. Parents, even teachers, but parents for sure, it has to be all love. All love. But you can't not say it because you don't know how they're going to take it. And I'm telling you, the real truth about chinuch is everything you want your child to know tomorrow, you tell him today. If you come to, people come to me all the time, Rabbi, my kid is 13, he doesn't want to daven in shul. Of course he doesn't daven. I can't say to the guy, I don't want to hurt his feelings. He says, of course not. You never spoke to him about davening in shul. The child hears about shul when he's so young, it's not even a question he should go. And then when he's able to go, it's a special thing. Get to shul. A special thing. It's a Teda. This is chinuch. Rabbi says it's an achrayus. It's an achrayus. The moment, this is the fact of life. Okay, I'll tell you what the facts of life are. I do this for a living. I say this speech every day, again and again. I don't have to have any speeches. Yeah, a bacha goes to yeshiva, a girl goes to yeshiva, she doesn't have a clue what life is. She doesn't have a clue. A boy gets married, a girl gets married, they still have a clue what life is. And then the Eibusha blesses them, they bring a child into the world. That's it. Life's over. That's it, finished. You're never, ever done parenting. From the time your first child is born, at Seif Kol Aderes, you're a father, you're a mother, you're teaching. And you're teaching by example. And if you have to grow up in order to do it, you have to grow up in order to do it. But you have to teach your children Yiddishkeit. 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 What does the Rebbe care about? The Rebbe is very happy when your children all match. It's beautiful. The picture is The Rebbe is very happy that your children are going after school to learn music and to learn dance and to learn art and to learn exercise. And I'm not saying that these are bad things. But das ist nicht negeya. The Rebbe cares that the children should hear that the most important thing in their home and for their father and for their mother and therefore for them is Torah mitzvahs, Yiddishkeit. It's not complicated. It's really not complicated. I spoke last summer for a group of people. They came to the oil and they invited me to speak to them. These people had lists of shopping. I need a chatan, and I need a kala, I need a panasan, I need a kaparan, I need all the good sachen. They had a list of, everyone had a list of all the things that's from the Rebbe, and it works. People come to the oil for one simple reason. It works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't come. People come, all kinds, lahav goyim. People come to the Rebbe day and night. The oil is full of people. They're coming there. Some people come because they want to be connected. But the Rubam Kakulam, you come when something is bothering you. You listen to WhatsApps. If they wouldn't go home, they wouldn't come again. So this whole Farbrengen with these people was a nice Farbrengen. I put it up online in case you don't know who I am. Inside Chassidus at ORG, please check me out. At the end of the drash, I said, listen, you're all here because you have needs. And here's a holy Yidah, Grace Tzaddik, who the God Emes it is so not in your world. You know, the Rebbe said in the first Maimed, B'chlal nish be'erech haverecha b'teiro b'mitzvahs. In the first Maimed, B'chlal nish be'erech haverecha b'teiro b'mitzvahs. There's a ged in Allah called haverecha b'teiro b'mitzvahs. Hechech techiach as hamisachas haverecha b'teiro b'mitzvahs. Am she'itcha b'teiro b'mitzvahs. You are coming to a Yid that has no chiyav v'echocha. He has no obligation to give you musir if you don't do a mitzvah, because he's not chaver chabatenu b'mitzvahs. He lives in a different stratosphere, a different universe. And you come to him wegen was kommt man zu ihm? Wegen Parnasse, wegen gesund, wegen Archove, wegen noch Sachen. They're very important things. And the Rebbe is a nice man. He's a good. I heard that somebody once complained to the Rebbe that the Rebbe is different than the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe was very, very warm. And the Rebbe was very malchusdik. Whatever, this lump, this is beidem, nit negir. Someone very close to the Rebbe, who was, a friend, said to the Rebbe that the Chassidim feel that the Rebbe is a little bit distant. And the Rebbe, without hesitating, said to him, Reiv teva ein yachel makabel. You're complaining. Do you know what I'm giving you? I'm giving you so much good, you don't even know what to do with it. The Rebbe said to him, he complained to the Rebbe said, Reiv teva, and you have no idea how much the Rebbe gives. I mean gashmias, parnasa, gesund, nachas, kinder. The Rebbe gibt Kinder, we mentioned Etamin, Kinder, ich got Kinder, man kommt, und der Eibischte Bench, hat ihn gelernt, ich meine, die Welt davon zu gehen. So I said to these people, what does he want? Everybody came here with a laundry list. Everybody has a whole list of needs. And they're good needs. Just do him a favor. He's a nice Rebbe. He doesn't give brachas conditionally. He never did and never will. The Rebbe doesn't make conditions. And when the Rebbe makes a condition, it's not because he wants to be difficult. It's because he's, like the Rebbe said once, I'm telling you the reason this person is sick. You want the child to have a recovery, you have to start keeping kosher. It's not a deal. It's not tishkan handlerei. It's not conditional. It's not a mekach. The Rebbe gibt zist. Aber wir können geben etwas, was will. The Rebbe's whole metzias is that we should be a little more ehrlich. That we should raise our children with a little bit more of the value of America is nicht anders. America is nicht anders is that our life is the Yiddishkeit from beginning to the end and everything in between. Man darf verstehen. We're living in America. We're charedim. We're frume Yidden. Baruch Hashem. And there are many of us frume ehrliche Yidden. As the Eibush that they go home. Hashem God Almighty bless them. And they're quite well to do. We're not poor. We're not everybody in Lubavitch, not even in America is a malamed. Do you understand? The Yidden was verdienen sehr schön. And they want to enjoy the material bounty that the Eibush they gave them. And they're entitled. Kosher verdient, kosher, it's honest. But it's never allowed to be to the extent, like it says in the Pasuk, Shamanta Avisa Kasisa. Shaman Tavisa Kasisa, me wird fett, me wird dick, and you trample on the whole business. Yiddishkeit, parents have to understand that we want good Yiddish kinder. It's not going to happen by itself. You can't trust the schools. Not because the schools are bad, because you can't trust anybody. That Hadav and the kinder, a Mr. and a Mrs., a Chassan and a Kala, and a husband and a wife, have to, like the Rebbe says in the Hayim Yem, have to talk about the chinuch of their children all the time. And they have to constantly, B'tachas Eitzah. If you have little kids, trust me, you don't got problems. When they're going to be big, you're going to have much bigger problems. But if you invest now, you Pashut will, in all likelihood, not have those problems. But you have to invest. You have to decide that this is the most important thing in my life. That my children should be Erlich, and Frum, and Yiddish, and Chassidish. This is Chinuch. This is Chinuch. The Rabbeim, the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Rebbe were Meiser Nefesh for children. The amount of time that Rebbe spent with kids is not normal. So nicht normal. You're talking about a Yid, a Lakus, Mamish, a Lakus, Ongetan and a Guf, a Ga'an, a Ga'oinim, a Ga'an and Nigel, this was nicht gewinn, als 100 Jahre nach einer. And he sits in his Gisach Teire, und rum seine Fies spielen sich Kinder. Adin Even Yisrael, you know, the Rebbe told him to change his name. And you listen to the Rebbe, Adin Even Yisrael. He was like, Adin Even Yisrael was a Godel Yisrael. He was a Godel Yisrael. In a different universe, is a Godel Yisrael. And never given about Shiva, Rachman von Hailesiyah, which is the biggest thing in the world. Makom Shbal Tshuva Eimde, Veitzig Murach Lamideh, Unegvinechet to the two of the Babich. That's strike one and strike two. Yeah. Ik ben a Godel. Adin Even Yisrael was a Gon Sha'en Komoyu. He was an incredible person. And the accomplishments that this man is unbelievable. It's not to be believed he accomplished. He would come to 7-7. I remember, I was a boy, and Bechlal, I wanted to see personalities. When I was a boch in yeshiva, when it came to the Pagra, I would look for the shluchim. I would look for the people in Lubavitch who were Shem Dovers. I remember I went to look, I wanted to push it to look at Mullah Zimov. Mullah Zimov, most successful shliach in the world. In 770, he was a scoop on the dresses. He was a shmata. That's how he felt about himself. And I wanted to see Epis. There was nothing to see. Adin Even Yisrael came to the Rebbe more often than you think. He was not quite often. He was a big man. He was a great man. And he was a Weltzman. He was very well respected. He was very well known. And Lubavitcher Chassidim and him had a funny relationship. At the Gewalken 77 Bocher. He in 770, he was mamish. People elbowed him. I watched it. He was a small little man. He wasn't a big strong guy. Elbow him, he was a great man. And in 770, he was a nobody. And this was that they found him a place behind the Rebbe. By Farbrengen, there was a shtickle seder. During davening, I remember we were standing mit the shul, mit him gestupt, like nothing. But during Farbrengen, he wasn't a Pashtarid. He stood behind the Rebbe. I don't think of it always was, but in the later years, behind the Rebbe. And he has a book. Adin Even Yisrael has a book which he calls My Rebbe. And that's exactly what it is. It's not about the Rebbe, it's about his Rebbe. And one of the things that blows his mind is the children. Here's a picture of the Rebbe sitting. You can't see the Rebbe, because the Rebbe's back is to the picture, and all around the Rebbe is Kinderlach. And you have to know him. He was about Seichel. He was a Chochem. He's a person who lived in ideas. What happened if a little kid came next to him and bumped into him? He was Mavalbal him. What happened if a little kid sat down at the next table and started to play Chumash, looking for the Pays and the Veys and the Samachs and the upside down Aleph to get 2,000 points? It was a Machon Tummel. They disturbed him. Kinder than a Kinder. And the Rebbe is surrounded by children, und sie baden him nicht. They don't disturb him, they don't bother him. There was absolutely no generation gap. The kids sit around the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, so you know a child once, tied the Rebbe's shoelaces to each other. So Meister Shahaya, he was, the kids would sit on the Rebbe's table. After that, they made a gzeda. They could sit around the Rebbe, but a child took the shlichel from one shoe, and the shlichel from the other shoe, and tied them together. The Rebbe had to go to minute, he couldn't work. I don't think the Rebbe bent down and he untied his shoes and the Shabbos afternoon after Farbrengen, he got out of shul or whatever it was. And it was decided that the kids can't sit under the table. What did they do to the child? They shot him. There was the Rebbe's Yibige Gemakai to children. The Matzev, the Maimed of Tashma Malef, where the Rebbe made Tivus Hashem. And the Rebbe danced with the kids. I was already after Bar Mitzvah, but the guy's just a couple years younger. The Rebbe is dancing with the kids by himself. The Rebbe with the Kinder. The Rebbe gave unbelievable koiches to the children. Unbelievable koiches to the children. Because, I don't need you to say this. I'm more looking at Satan. Who have heard of a Rebbe with little kids? So you've heard of the Chabad Rabbeim did not see children. In Lubavitch, they never brought kids. They didn't bring children. They didn't bring women. You come here, and the Rebbe is everybody's Rebbe, Favos, because everybody needs him, and he needs to give what he has to give to every single Jew. We are parents. We're a father and a mother. We must, if you want a takeaway from Yud Shvat, go home to your wife and say, we need to become more conscientious about chinuch. Not nervous, not angry, like a rabbi once said in a speech. Don't become OCD. But we need to start appreciating that our children need to see from us that this is more important than the vacation. It's more important than the house in the mountains. The most important thing is Teru Mitzvahs. And we have to work together with our spouse to find ways of planting seeds in our children when they're little. That as they grow up, that they get the message of what we value, not what we want from them, what we value, what we consider important. And if we teach our children that this is what we value, when they'll grow up, they'll value the same thing. And I'm saying this with ganz nemes. I wrote a list of speeches. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them. Chassidus Farbrengen, aber once Nesa Teva Azeis Bisol. I don't agree with that. It's a very appropriate topic for Farbrengen and Yud Shvat to speak about chinuch. Why? Because the Rebbe lived there. Der große Rebbe hat sich auch gegeben mit kleinen Kindern. He was so concerned, not just about Lubavitcher children, about any Yiddish kid and any Meiser of chinuch. He was so negeya. And you know, the Rebbe used to ask, when he would meet people from other kreisen, he would ask them how they mechanech their children. And he wasn't only asking because he wanted to criticize. He was trying to find maybe he could learn something from them, and he could incorporate it into a different model. We're not allowed to be young when we have our children, even though we all have our children when we're young. That's how they have to be in the world. We need to take responsibility. When our kids are small, we need to decide that we are going to make the Iker Kol Iker in our home Yiddishkeit. The kids have to hear it, and the kids have to see it, and the kids have to experience it. Mitech simcha or mitech ava. And I am telling you, you will never fight with your child about any issue if you prepare him. The bar mitzvah doesn't start when he's 12. You understand? It starts when he's 8. He starts preparing his maimer when he's 12. The business with learning is, I don't know where that comes from. But you want your child to learn Hilchos Tefillin. You can't learn Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't start when he's 12. It starts when he's a little boy. He hears what a Yid is. And then when he turns that age, it's a natural thing. But if until he's 12 years old, you don't want to mention it to him. And then all of a sudden, boom, now you have to do this because it's not going to look good at the bar mitzvah. The balabatim are going to come and you're not going to know the Bible. That's not what this is about. It's about raising our children. It's about raising our children. Okay, can
I say something?
You can say 2 things.
From all what you said the last 15 minutes, from everything that you said the last 15 minutes, it's mamash, mosek, mitvash, and continue please, Chaim. What everybody is taking home and telling the wife now, this Shabbos I'm not taking the children to shul. So I want to say something. And Rabbi Paltiel told us. Okay? This is what Rabbi Paltiel said, and this is the headline of the Farbrengen, no more children in shul. So many times when the children cannot behave or cannot control themselves in shul, and this is the reason why you said in such a case they should stay home because it's not a pikuach nefesh, they should go to shul. But in maybe even a majority of the cases, the reason why some children are not behaving or controlling themselves in shul That's because they don't have a dug mechaya from the parents. So the parents should work hard. The father should work hard not to talk by davening, to work hard to daven, to work hard to sit down in every time in one place with a siddur, to try whatever he can, and the child will follow what he is doing. So not stay home and I will continue talking in shul and doing nothing.
Okay, Rabbi Weinfeld, now that you started up with me, I got to answer you. No. Ich darf dir entfernen. Herr Machon, listen to me very carefully. I am not talking about what you're talking about. I'll explain to you the difference, and you'll tell me if you disagree. I'll tell you my story. It happened to me. How did I figure this chachma out? I lived on Carroll in Kingston. A stone was open 7-7. I had a 2-year-old boy. But 10 years I go. Ich habe genommen 77 Shabbos, noch ein stroke. There was no place to sit. No place to sit. The davening starts 10, it finishes 12:30, and he behaved for a very long time. After Kesatera, towards Musaf, he became restless, and I'm screaming at him, babe, far up, Sharon. Anyway, I got upset at my own son. And I'm walking home from shul, and it hit me, du idiot. You take a 2-year-old to shul, in 770s, no place for him to sit. I remember him sitting down on the floor, Pashat. He was always gematet. And timeless. So I came home to my wife, and I said to my wife, ich habe ihm genommen in der Schule nicht, was ihr gewollt. Ich habe genommen in der Schule gehabt, das ist genug. Ich bin ein Boychikel. Ich habe gesagt, geht in Schule, wenn kann davenen. And my wife said tzaddikus. So he stayed home till he was 6 or 7. And that was the language. In other words, I'm not telling you a philosophy. So I had this experience, and I had this epiphany. Shaita, you bring a 2-year-old to show, of course it's not going to behave. And he behaved better than all 2-year-olds. He was a Chassidish kid. He was a very nishan, sincere. Wie kann Kind durchhalten? So I didn't take him until he was 6 or 7. Und wie was? I never had a problem with any of my children. They sat next to me by davening, by kesatera. I don't think my children have any other kids. What I'm saying is, when you take babies to shul, now there's a place for it, you should know. The rebbe spoke about it. I could bring you a raya to the Sheisa by whole pilpul. People don't know this. The rebbe did a groundbreaking. Hanocha 7 Apina, Yud Tes El Tafshin Memches. Du gedenkst das? Das ist gewähnt durch die Soldier. So the rebbe did a groundbreaking. Right for Rosh Hashanah. And they built bathrooms, Baruch Hashem. That's the whole thing, so good basic pieces that we get by. Wait. Hoshana Rabbe, I told you, what's the Shabbos? Shabbos was Sunday. No, the Shemini Atzeres was Monday and Tuesday. Hoshana Rabbe, the Rebbe spoke without a mic, but in the back of the shul you could hear, there was a mic on quiet. It was ready after Maid, it was for Abdullah, and the Rebbe spoke. And mit amol the Rebbe ongehim reden wegen 770. A month before the Rebbe did Nerchen Sapina, and apparently behind the scenes, by the very, very important people, there was a Chalukah Deis. What they're going to rebuild 770. They had plans to build from Eastern Parkway till Union, and from Kingston till I don't know where. They wanted to buy all the properties and build a prachtige shul. So it was a Chalukah Deis what to do with the space. And apparently that saw that the Rebbe got that they should make a lot of offices. And the Rebbe said, "Da haben Plätze as Mames und können bringen die Wegelach. Da haben Plätze as the Kinder sollen können spielen." That went on. There's a tape of it. You could get the tape. And like I always tell my students, please do not trust me. Go get the tape and listen for yourself. Mothers have to have a place to put carriages. Children have to have a place to run around and play. As the Rebbe gesagt. And the Rebbe hat mal gesagt in an anderes Sicher. Was eine interessante Sache. Als Heint bringt man ältere Mädchen in Schul in SS Anoshim wie Amol. Amol, a Mädel nach a gewissen Gil is nicht rein SS. The Rebbe says today, the Rebbe said that today you bring girls into the men's section, I don't know for what age, but past 3. The Rebbe said that. So you could bring me rayas to be safe to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like this. This is my personal experience, and this is what I have raised my kids. Children come to shul when they can value shul. Before that, they hear about shul. And shul's a special place. and shul you go to when you can daven. Because when you take little children to shul, and shul becomes a playground, when they grow up, it doesn't become ois playground because they're older. To them, the shul is a playground. To me, it's common sense. Now, I understand, there are homes, there are couples where the wife pashat platzes. Sie kennt nicht. Maybe sie kennt nicht, that the man never the kinder in shul. Verstehe. But that's not every home. Chinuch is very, very much individual. But the sheet of chinuch is, children come to shul to daven. Not because you're mean to them and you're hard on them, because that's what a shul is for. You're teaching them what a shul is. And I think personally, and ich sage an andere Sache, was du sagst. Yeah. You teach the children, when you're going to be old enough to daven, you'll come to shul. And then when they're not old enough, you'll go to shul. And when you can't sit anymore, your sister will take you home. Because to sit into our own life in the shul is not a good thing. And this is how you teach the kids. This is what I was saying. Verstehst? The Rebbe should make by everybody, the heart should be easy. And the pockets should be full. Oz yimol etzchek pinu. When the pasuk says Oz yimol etzchek pinu, steht in Chassidus that osor lo'adam l'malei piv tzchek b'ilmazeh. A person's not allowed to laugh too hard in this world. Why? Because there's a presumption if you laugh too hard, it's prikasol. I'm looking for a word. It's holiness. It's Verlosenkeit. Mashiach het komen, het beginnen lachen. Oz yimos chikpinu. Now the Havana Shabbat, the pshat is that people laugh for different reasons. Everybody knows the Chassan HaMaimed. The Chassan HaMaimed Veismadach, yeah? So the Chassan HaMaimed, the Rebbe brings in our Rebbe's Maimed. That schik comes from Tainu, Kaposho, Tabilti, Murkav, Abilti, Murgish Klal. Laughter comes from the highest madregis Netzman Neshama, laughter. The klipa that's associated with laughter, it's a whole industry to make people laugh. And the way laughter is experienced in Welt, it's klipa, and sometimes it's mamish shofel, it's very low, yeah? But the Gemara says, they tell about the Rebbe, there was a Yid, and this ben Kafrumer, when I gave the Letz, and he used to make people laugh. This goes back to 50 years. So ich habe gehört von Chevra, als gestorben, had the Rebbe the man Farbrengen the Gemara. The Rebbe mentioned when he died. The Rebbe mentioned he died in the 1970s. The Rebbe mentioned by Farbrengen that the Gemara says that they asked who has a chelik in El Haba, and they answered Hanebatche. People who make people laugh. Even if the jokes are not so kosher, you understand? People should laugh is a very, very big thing. But the truest example of laughter, laughter in Kedusha means that you're not laughing at something in a joke. Laughter in Kedusha means that the joy, the positivity is so strong that not only are you smiling, but you're literally laughing uncontrollably. Malacht. In other words, people associate laughter with jokes. But associating laughter with jokes has to do with people who never cannot laugh. So they need something external to bring them to laughter. And the laughter is good for, I don't know what, right? Whatever the cheshbonos are. And it's true, laughter is a very good thing. But sometimes, you don't make any jokes. A person is in a maimed matzah, a person is in a condition where he's so uplifted that he laughs. He laughs. And that's the pshat. Oz yimot chikpinu. Mashiach is going to come, and the world is going to be full of light, full of goodness, full of holiness. The world is full of holiness, full of goodness. Vet men lachen. We're going to laugh. People's idea of Mashiach is interesting. People's idea of Mashiach is a reflection of their imagination and what they know. But we have a Rambam, yeah? The Rambam teaches us what Mashiach means. And the Rebbe teaches us what the Rambam means. So we know that Mashiach is not some kind of a caddy land, it's a fantasia, a Welt von Dimien. Mashiach, Poshet means, Mashiach means a simple thing. The Eibishter tells each human being what he needs to do. A Yid was given Taryag mitzvahs, And if he's a Kohen, he has these mitzvahs. If he's a Levi, he has these mitzvahs. If he's a man, he has these mitzvahs. If he's a woman, he has these mitzvahs. If he's a child, he has these mitzvahs. And the Eibishter gave Goyim Shabbat mitzvahs. Mashiach means a very, very simple thing. That the Eibishter gave us mitzvahs, and we do them. That's against Mashiach. But all of us. What's Mashiach? Mashiach means that every person does what the Eibishter tells him. Now, it's impossible. Come, a few frumme wackos in Brooklyn, but the Welt is doch frei. It wasn't the Pshat. The Pshat is like, we look at Elam Hazeh, look at the world, and we see all these people that are keeping Torah mitzvahs. We see all these goyim that are mitzvahs and and we imagine that they made some kind of a choice. They made some kind of a pchida. They made a choice. We're not from the schleppers who are never such losers that they keep Torah mitzvahs. We're independent thinkers and belong to the modern world. But that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is. The way it is that when a person doesn't do what the Eibishter tells him, it's because he doesn't have the koyach. When the Eibishter gives a Yid a mitzvah, and Lahavlav does, he gives a Goy a mitzvah, and he's not able to do it, it's not because he doesn't care. It's not because he's too much of a chevra man to listen to the Eibishter. It's the pshat and hot nish the koyach of them. He has no strength. There's people can have just on Elam, Baruch Hashem. This is mamish unbelievable. This is mamish gewaldig. Mit this Chassidus Farbrengen, Yud Shvat, the rebbe had zicher nachas. This is on Elam, Baruch Hashem. Hey, you know Yodin is benavshei. How often does a person do so? Not you, you're a tzaddik gomer, but the yenem, yeah. The yenem was the Veram Bazich. The Rebbe used to quote, "Hagoya shebekirbecha." Ametreft sich zusammen mit dem Goya shebekirbecha. When you meet your own guy, the meiste mit shmol munkes. Sometimes we do what we shouldn't, and sometimes we don't do what we should. What's the pshat? We don't care. It's a pashut shver. It's hard. Now, sometimes it's hard because we have no koyach. And sometimes it's hard because there's a se'er shav isa. There's the Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Hara is uman v'mlachte. As a uman, the Yetzer Hara is a chavraman. The Yetzer Hara has so much patience. He waits and he waits. Veistach lepesach chatas levet. And look at it. It's a great Yiddish word. He waits and he waits and he waits and he had plenty time to let it medavens evat. The Yetzer Hara is sticking around. There's patience. The Tzelt HaMaisa. This is the Maisa. Von einem Maisa von Baal Shem Tov. Ich meine, das ist der Wort. Aber ich glaube, alle Maisa sind mir ein Narr. Aber ich glaube, dass die Maisa kein Treffen mit den Apokades. Es ist ein Maisa von Baal Shem Tov. Sie ist getroffen, sie ist nicht getroffen, weiß ich nicht. Aber wenn es nicht nach Maisa ist, beginne ich und du, ja? What's the story? And the Baal Shem Tov had getroffen a Porush. You know the story? I forgot how I know it. If I read it, if I heard it. If I read it, it was something more believable. If I heard it, it was something less believable. The Baal Shem Tov came and met a Porush. And this Porush used to fast Shabbos to Shabbos. Fast? This Porush used to fast Shabbos to Shabbos. How do we do this? This Porush used to fast. This Porush fasted Shabbos to Shabbos. Shabbos to Shabbos. Nie gegessen eine ganze Woche. Ein Mensch kennt das nicht. Friday afternoon, you're not allowed to go into Shabbos morning. So before Shabbos, he would drink a glass of warm milk. And that's how he would break his fast. And Shabbos, he ate for a whole week. Whatever. I mean, you just fast a ganze Woche from Shabbos to Shabbos. The koiches nafshim, the koiches gush, it's not normal. So the Baal Shem Tov came to see this Porush. And the Baal Shem Tov met him. And the Baal Shem Tov asks, I forgot the Prati Asipur. The bottom line is another man shows up who had been for Shikta, for jail. And the Baal Shem Tov asks this other person in the presence of this Porush, where are you coming from? He says, I was in jail. And I just got out of jail. He says, what happened? You were in jail? He says, it's a funny thing, he says. I was sitting in jail, and behind, on the other side of the wall, there were these people. And at the beginning of the week, they were very happy. They were laughing, and they were singing, and they were unbelievably happy. But as the week wore on, they got into a worse and worse mood. When they got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they were hysterical. Mamish ois mensch. You could hear them crying and complaining and screaming. And then right before Shabbat, they all started laughing. They laughed. and the laughter lasts till Monday and Tuesday, and the same chayzah chalila. They get into a bad mood, till Friday afternoon, and Friday afternoon they gelacht. This is what this man was sitting in jail, and from the other side of the wall he hears people, madne Menschen. Freitag Mittag lacht men, they laugh mamish b'simcha rabba v'atzuma, and then they laugh through the whole Shabbos, Sunday, Monday. By Tuesday they're already in a bad mood, by Thursday they're hysterical, Friday afternoon they're ice mensch, and then Mittamol, right before Shabbos they're lachen. Hat der Baal Shem Tov gesagt, that there is a Polish who fasts from Shabbos on Shabbos, and he's standing in front of a Polish that fasts from Shabbos on Shabbos. He fasts from Shabbos to Shabbos, and there are shadim, there are ruches, spirits, that they need to get chayes from this guy. And then fast a ganze Woche. Und lernt ne David, imagine not eating a whole week. I miss a meal, bin ich ice mensch. I miss 2 meals, the people around me are ice mensch. I miss 3 meals, you have to clear up the neighborhood. A fast mit Shabbos on Shabbos. Und dienen Eibischen, und die Ruches werden mishule, der ice mensch, yeah. He gets closer to Shabbos, he's getting more, you know what it is. You understand yourself. You know what it is at the end of Tisha B'Av, you know, you're just in a bad mood. You don't want anybody to do something that's going to allow you to show how nervous you are. You get some feeling, not 6 shots, I'm less. Comes Friday afternoon, and these ruches are thinking, oh no, bald they starben. This guy has a glass of milk, but his hands are shaking. At the ganze Woche nicht gegessen. You need a whole week. So he picks up the glass with both hands and he drops the glass, and the milk spills, and he gets angry. Und von dem leben die ruches the ganze Woche. So that's why in the beginning of the week you're in a very good mood. But as they get closer to Friday, they start getting nervous. Oh no! Kommt Shabbos nach Freitag nach Mittag, der Mamish ist Mensch. And then he drops his milk, and he gets angry, and they start laughing. So the Baal Shem Tov tells this to that other guy, when the Polish gechalisht. Pavos? What does he give him? You understand? A whole week he didn't eat. As he come Friday nach Mittag, he picked up his glass, and his hands were shaking, he was hungry. He tasted. And if he dropped the glass, the milk would spill, he'd get angry. For them, I'm the ruch of the ganze Woche. People don't do Avedas because they don't care. Es ist schwer. Am alle gewesen, Menschen mit Mummel Aches. Heute viel nicht Mummel Teoven. Es ist Mummel Itzolein. Es ist Mummel Itzovein. Verstehst? Be ehrlich. To be the way the Eibishter wants is right. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows they Sirtzach, and everybody knows they Signev, and everybody knows they Sinev, and everybody knows they Sachmed, and everybody knows they Saneh, and everybody knows they Tisave. Everybody knows. Everybody even knows Kavit Tzidich Vesamecha. Everybody even knows Elatita Shavelech Lashov. Everybody even knows Anecha Deshem Alekecha. Alaves. Mima Akim Shver. It's pushing hard. We're weak, and we're tired. And we're always get mated, and unfortunately for many of us, our lives don't have enough substance, so it doesn't take much for us to be tired. If a person has a life of substance, so b'meila he has more koyach. But the Yetzirah is a woman, he knows to present to each person his own Yetzirah. What's the Yetzirah? A little more than you can handle. And you platz. Mashiach het kommen, wird man nicht platzen. Das ist der ganze Mashiach. Das ist der ganze Meister, that's it. That's all. Just imagine. Let's the mole. The last time, yeah, Mistama was 17, 18 years ago. Yeah, Mistama, yeah. The last time you had an asayin, I had an asayin, and it's not the pshat I don't care. It's the pshat that the Yetzirah got to me, and I was tired, and I was hungry, and I was in a bad mood, and I had a fight with my wife. Yeah. Ubemele bin ich reingefallen. A Mashiach had come and nicht reinfallen. That's the whole Mashiach. That's the ganze Mashiach. That's the whole situation. But you see, you understand what that means? Imagine you, every person in this room has good days. Every person in this room has moments with their abandoning. When you slept enough, but not too much, yeah? You ate enough, but not too much. Als geschlafen, aber nicht zu viel. Als gegessen, aber nicht zu viel. The cup is clogged, yeah? You're strong. Think when the maybe should be enough. So you start off 8 o'clock in the morning, we have 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, to get all this goods. Now it's 4 in the afternoon. the engine is running out of gas. So what's the eight? You eat, but then you overeat, and you overeat, you become fat of it, you become more bloated, and then it's not good, yeah? And that's when you get into bad moods, and that's when you start getting irritated, and that's when you start getting angry, and that's when you get impatient. It's poshet mahat nish kakoyach. The ganze Mashiach is mit haben koyach. It doesn't mean we have koyach, it means we have ratzon. Mashiach Tzidkenu is a boss of Adam, he's a person who's going to bring into this world a koyach, that we should be able to do what we know now that we're supposed to do. And lahavdil the goy knows that we're supposed to do, but then shred, it's a harder, this is the situation. Mezindik nish of talachas. We don't not care. We don't have koyach. As Mashiach had come and have koyach. That's the whole chiddush. But it's an inyan amiti. In other words, Mashiach is a person with a bigger neshama than any neshama that's ever been, and he's going to have such a big neshama that he's going to give koyach to every yid and lahavdil every goy, that whatever Hashem says I should do. For me, when I keep mitzvahs, it's good for me. When I learn Torah, when I have self-control, when I manage my time well, when I don't waste my time with shtusim v'avodim, when I don't 11 o'clock at night when I'm tired, and because I'm tired I waste time, and then it's 2 o'clock in the morning and the whole next day is ruined. The Eibush that gives me the koyach poshut to get into bed and go to sleep. Oh, that's the ganze Mashiach. That's what Mashiach means. Mashiach means that people do what the Eibush gave them to do, because Mashiach gives people the koyach amazakan oisvin. So Mashiach's nothing. Mashiach's boring. In the language of the Baruch, Mashiach is boring. But imagine such a world. Imagine I can only speak about me because I got enough trouble with me, yeah? When people start telling me, Lashon Hara, matachlib led Lashon Hara. Politik, the best is Aka, Lashon Hara. Reden wegen jenem, I need so whenever, the Lashon Hara, the man is a spiegel, give a cook a spiegel, you know what? You come back tomorrow. The Weile, look at the mirror and say, really, mamish, you're going to tell me schmutz wegen jenem? You know what? Ich habe mal gehört von Rabbi Ruben, so, ich habe noch nicht geredet, hat mir gesagt, als sie gewinnt Rebbes, sie gewinnt der heilige Belser und sie gewinnt der Munkatscher. Ich bin sich nicht gepostet der Meise. Dachte ich mir an der Belser, an der Belser gewollt an der Schuzen, so sich überbeten. Efter mit zwei anderen Tzadikim, von größer Tzadikim, and the Shkutzim, every Rebbe got Shkutzim. You know, what was the right that you were a real Rebbe? But you had Chassidim and gelernt and gedavened? No. Aber got Shkutzim. You had the raya that you really made it as a Rebbe, that you had Shkutzim. What's my Shkutzim? They nicht gelernt, nicht gedavened, but if you'll say a word about my Rebbe, I'll chop your head off. That was critical mass. A größer Rebbe got Shkutzim. So there was a Rebbe, the Shkutzim, the Fatshepet, the zweiten Rebbe, because the erste Rebbe, the heiten, kimmen immer beter. Nein. The zweite, nein. Ich habe meine eigene Schutzim. I'm doing good. I don't need your Schutzim. Ich habe meine eigene Schutzim. Jeder hat seine eigene Schutzim. You understand? What's the Shegitz? The Shegitz is Schwachkeit. The Shegitz is it's late in the day and you're tired and you worked hard and you don't have as much koyach. The bells in the Munkitchen. I think it was the bells in the Munkitchen, but it could be it was others. The bells are gesagt, the Munkitchen. But it wasn't between the bells and the Munkitchen. It was the Chassidus. Actually, say other Rebbes, but one Rebbe says the other Rebbe, ich schicken the Shkutzim. The Chivah beten. Ich habe meine eigene Shkutzim. I'm doing good. I don't need your Shkutzim. Ich habe meine eigene Shkutzim. But the other eigene Shegitz. Everybody has their own Shegitz. What's the Shegitz? The Shegitz is, I'm tired. The Shegitz is, ich habe mich koyach. The Shegitz is, I'm in a bad mood. The Shegitz is, der Arbeit gewinnt schwer. Kommt man heim und hat Kass. Kass amidero. Kol Achei's, right? Omer Razal, steht in Rambam. Omer Razal. Kol das Chassidische Rambam. Omer Razal. Kol Achei's kilu eved aved zara. Wo der Razal? Not in Zayar. Aber der Rambam ist gesagt, der Zayar. Omer Razal. Der Rambam ist medayik. Omer Razal. Kol Achei's kilu, ist nicht das Razal. Omer Razal. The Chazal said, Kol Achei's, someone gets angry, kilu aved zara, the only makra, that Zayar, that the Rambam brings it, is a zayah. Anger is the worst midah. Anger is the worst. Anger is the worst midah. Anger is the worst midah. And if a person has anger, it's a rachmanas lefem, it's a rachmanas lefro, rachmanas lekinder. But you're not always angry. When are you angry? When you're tired. When you're angry in a bad mood. Imagine even when you're tired, you have enough koyach to control the anger. Imagine when you're in a bad mood, you have enough koyach to control it. And that's Mashiach. Mashiach Poshit is a maimed of matzid where we're able to do what we need to do. And we're not doing it for the Eivishter. We're doing it Tihu Chayecha. We're doing it because it's right and because it's good and it's good for us. That's what Mashiach means. That's what Mashiach means. But in such a world, where all people have enough koyach, that when they're weak, they're stronger than the Yetzer Hara. It's a different world. It's a world of alakus. It's a world of Torah. It's not the Oizus of Meifsim. It's not the Malachim flying with wings. It's Poshet, a world, Mashiach Tzedkenu is going to give a koyach for all of human beings to be the way the Eibush made us. That's what Mashiach is. Anyway, so the Pasuk says, Chazak Faret, all the Yemos Cheshbinu. As Mashiach is coming, we cannot laugh. We're all to laugh. Why? Today you laugh. Laugh is holiness. People need other people to make them laugh. The Gemara says, and they were not Chesed Tzadikim, they were Kam Yidden, but they made people laugh. Laughter is a very good thing. But many of us need laughter because someone makes a joke. The greatest form of laughter comes from just existing. You know, if your life and your avodas Hashem is good, you don't need to hear a joke in order to laugh. You're in a maimed of matzav as es lachtzach. You understand? You laugh from yourself because you find yourself in a good maimed of matzav. Oh, the Mashiach is coming. People will be able to laugh. And the Gemara says, also now you're not allowed to laugh because laughter is holiness. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that Oz is begemati Yishmoina. 8. What's 8? The Baal Shem Tov, the Mesech Magid, the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe, the Tzedek, the Rebbe Rash, the Rebbe Rashad, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Oz, Yemos, Chayk Pinu. The Frierdiker Rebbe's name was Yosef Yitzchak. It's the Megman Lach. That's what the Rebbe said. Hein Megman Lach. In the olden days, you were not allowed to laugh. You were afraid that the laughter is going to be not the way it's supposed to be. Today, we could laugh, and we must laugh. I work in yeshiva, and one of the Yidden that I work with, who's almost old enough to be my father, he's a God Achei Temimim. His name is Rabbi Yossi Paltiel Farbrengen. He's a very, very big Talmid Chacham. He's one of the biggest experts in halacha in the world. And he's never chabitel nikeh, he's never chalababasher. They ruined his whole life. He'd been a misnagid, he'd been a gadol. But he's a Chassidish Yid. So he told me once, I'm married to a Rebbe Nissen Zanenikl. It's a Nemenov. So he told me once that he remembers Rebbe Nissen coming back from the Rebbe. Rebbe Nissen Nemenov went to the Rebbe for Tishrei Toshin Tezvav, the first time. Then he went again Toshin Yudzayin, he went 3 times for Tishrei. I heard this from my Shver, that after he was by the Rebbe 3 times for Tishrei, the Rebbe told him he should never come for Tishrei again. Well, that's not in yeshiva. As a coming another time. So he called Yud Kislev, he called Yud Shvat. But 3 Tishrei he was by the Rebbe. Toshin Tezvav, Toshin Yudzayin, Toshin Yudtes. The first Tishrei, the Nesias of the Rebbe was 4 years old, Tzachako. Reb Nissen. And the Rebbe knew Reb Nissen from Russia, you know that? The Rebbe knew Reb Nissen from Russia. There was Achei Temimim in Kharkiv. And the Rebbe was in Kharkiv. And the Rebbe came very, very, very early in the morning. And Reb Nissen was a Yiddah, a soldat, and Nissen got very early, and oftentimes he would come into the Zal, and the Rebbe, who was not yet a chassan, he was not yet married, he was not even engaged, the Rebbe was there, and the Rebbe ruled Reb Nissen from Ruslan. There's the Maise, so Abba wusste Maise, but it happened with Reb Nissen. It's a famous story, I get from Shver, as I go with Reb Nissen, that a Bocher came to Yekatinoslav. The Rebbe's father was Rav in Yekatinoslav, the Rebbe Petros, was a big city. And they said, in those days, the Bocher used to raise money for the yeshiva. That was to say, they sent the Talmidim around, and they would raise money for the yeshiva. So the Bocher came to Yekatinoslav to raise money for Achei Temimim. So the Rebbe has been angestanden, but the beautiful Leivik, Reb Leivik, yeah? And Reb Nissen is gekommen again. I heard this from my Shver. Reb Nissen came to Yekatinoslav, and he asked to stay by Reb Leivik, and he stayed in the house. And he asked Label to help him to raise money for Achei Temimim. So Label walked around from house to house with him, the Rebbe's brother, to raise money for Achei Temimim. He asked the Rebbe, the Ramash, the Rebbe, he should also help him. So the Rebbe said, "Ich habe keine Zeit, aber ich habe gegeben einen Brief zu einem." The Rebbe said to him, "I don't have time to go from house to house with you, but I'll give you a letter and you'll go to one person." He got more from that one person than from Label's whole collection, verstehst? So the Rebbe, this is mit dem Nissen. The story is famous, aber der Schwer hat mir gesagt, als ich mit dem Nissen. Und der Rebbe hat ihm gesagt, ich habe einen Brief, und es geht zu einem, von jenem einem hat gehabt mehr, wie gehabt von der ganzen Label. So the Rebbe knew who the Nissen was. Anyway, Nissen was a Chassidische Yid, was a Kabbalah Selnik. Anyway, he came back to France. Er besolt mir gesagt, ich will aber mit für ihn gehen. Er geboren bei Tafshin Beis Mistala, ja? So Tafshin Tezov, aber mit für ihn gehen. 15 Jahre, ich weiß Tafshin auf. Ich gewinnt zu alt. Reb Nissen kommt von dem, I wish I could talk in Yiddish. Reb Nissen comes back from the Rebbe, and he says, Behishtoimus. This is his first visit. The second visit and the third visit were, more complicated. But the first visit was a Lukus B'Pshitas. There's a lot of nice stories about that first visit. He came back and he said, Behishtoimus. You heard of Reb Nissen. Reb Nissen was a Kabbalah Selnik. Reb Nissen was a man of such gvura. Ich habe nicht gekannt. I heard from people who knew him. When Reb Nissen davened, he turned red like a beet. Reb Nissen davened. When he ate, gegessen, he was more red than when he davened. Du verstehst? Ausgerechnet jeden Bissen. He would sit with the food, every piece of food that immer getracht für davon. Du verstehst? Reb Nissen. I heard of people who saw. B'shassen daven he was red. B'shassen essen me noch red. He would eat daven. He was red like a tomato, like a beet. And when he ate, he was redder. He was such a soldier. He was such a Kabbalah Selnik. He was so mastered himself. And he comes back from New York. What's the message? The Rebbe will as alles soll sein besimcha. Simple message. You gotta be happy. Finished. Das ein Freilich. And he said, ich hab gehört von der Bisrael. Wie darf man das alles besimcha? Tshuva darf nicht dann besimcha. Tisha B'Av ist besimcha. Aber alles besimcha. Everything besimcha. So Nissen said, I don't know how you're supposed to do it. But I'm telling you, this Rebbe, alles besimcha. Everything freilich. He doesn't want to hear any atzvus, any marashchede. In other words, not when there's no excuse. When there is an excuse. This is when he came back. And for the Nissen, that was very hard. He was not Mr. Happy. He was Mr. Angestrengt. He was Mr. Nervous. He was uptight. He was round up like a top that you let go. He would spin until he'd fly away. But Nissen was and he comes back from the Rebbe. What does the Rebbe say? Everything besimcha. Everything besimcha. Everything besimcha. And this is what the Rebbe said. Ozi motzach pinum. After the times of the Friedrich Rebbe, meg ben lachen. In the old days, laughing is a very dangerous situation. Now, the Rebbe said, "Memeg lachen, you're allowed to laugh. Everything has to be done with simcha." In der Chagem zu verstehen, ich meine, es ist nicht gerade ein Pilpel. Es ist wichtig. It's very, very important. It's very important. It's very important to understand that the Rambam writes. Everybody knows this Rambam, right? It's the Lubavitcher Rambam. The Rambam writes in the end of Hilchos Sukkah. The Rambam writes in the Sukkah that on Sukkot was a big simcha. I don't know if you know this. The Rambam does not hold that Nisach HaMayim is connected to simcha. But everybody assumes simcha is, the Gemara says, the Mishnah says simcha is based on Sheyeva. What's the Sheyeva? Mayim. Ushaf the Mayim is also Mayim Shua. So the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot was a big simcha. It was a big simcha on Sukkot. What was the simcha? The simcha from the Mayim. If you look at Rambam, it's messed up. Simchas Beis HaSheva is in the halachas Nidim Musafim. But I'm sorry, Beis HaSheva. That in Sukkot, a whole year there was Yayin. And there was that Yayin, they had Shir. And in Sukkot, in addition to the Yayin and the Shir, there was also Mayim. And the whole say they went down into the Shilayach, and they drew the water, and they came up to Sharamayim, and they came in, Taku, Veiriu, Vetaku, Al Kol Tkir, there was Kach Lakach, Al Kol Tro, was Kach Lakach. They came into Nazara, and they poured the wine on his back. But there's no remez of the Simcha at all. When the Rambam speaks about the water, they poured it on his back, and Simcha's Beis HaShe'eva is not Simcha for pouring the water on his back. It was for the She'iva Samayim, by night, for drawing the water. In Rambam, there's a ganz nicht da. It's in the Mishnah, the Gemara, it's not the Rambam. What does the Rambam say? That in Sukkot, they made a tikkun gadol, a chalamayit, they made a place for the women, they made a place for the men, but verbracht a ganze Woche. But he doesn't connect it to the Mayim at all. The Rambam does not connect it to Shivas HaMayim. The Rambam just says, on Sukkot, they danced the whole night. Shivas, in other words, the day that holds that Simchas Beis HaShe'eva is Shemishama Yesheva B'ruach HaKodesh. So Sichas wegen dem, to the Yerushalmi. Mir halten wie der Bavli, als Simchas Beis HaShe'eva means Shivas HaMayim. The Yerushalmi halt, Misham, et cetera, jeder ben Amitai. Is Zachal in Nevuah, mit Simchas Beis HaShe'eva. So the Rambam passes like the Yerushalmi, that the Simcha of Simchas Beis HaShe'eva is not connected to water, it's connected to Ruach HaKodesh. It's a separate thing. So the Rambam writes that Sukkot is mefreilach, Beis HaMikdash. He says all the details, what they did, and so on. After that, the Rambam finishes. Simcha ba'aveda sakelu aveda gedela. And he's a whole halacha. And he speaks about Simcha Shel Mitzvah. The Rambam holds the higher Simcha Shel Mitzvah. The Rebbe has a look at the Sichas that says even higher Simcha, but the Rambam doesn't speak about. But the Rambam says about Simcha. Simcha is avoida gedola. Avoida gedola means it's a big job. Avoida gedola means it's very important. And avoida gedola also means it's not so easy. Avoida gedola means it's a job. Avoida gedola means it's a job. It's work. What's the work? The Eibush does what he wants. The Eibush does what he wants. The Eibush does what he wants. And I'm freilich. That's avoida gedola. The Eibush does what he wants. Some days he gives me a nice dish. And some days he gives me a dish which is not so fresh. And sometimes he gives me a dish which is rotten to the core. And I'm freilich. Why? Because avoida. I work on being besimcha. And this, Rabbi Yossi, I really feel, as if you care what I think, yeah? I really feel that in our generation, the ganze Chassidus is simcha. I'm also going to in Yonim. If you need to understand, if the Rebbe's approach, if Yazei Vertman a Chassid's Vertman, you become a Chassid when you besimcha. Why? You know why? Because it's hard. And you know what else? It's positive. Right? Trach gut wird sein gut. That's gering, I'm asking you. Trach gut wird sein gut. It's easy? It's not easy. It's easier to cry and say Tillim and give tzedakah and put your face in the cages than to trach gut wird sein gut. But it's positive. And that's why the Rebbe says trach gut wird sein gut. Simcha. In the world of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Deir HaShvi, maybe it's Iker Kol Iker. A Jew needs to be besimcha. Now, it's not that he's besimcha because he won the lottery. It's not that he's besimcha because his life is perfect. It's not that he's besimcha because everything is in order. He's besimcha because the simcha is avodah gedola. And the fact is, when a Yid has the initiations that the Eibush sometimes gives some people, and he insists on nevertheless being besimcha, the simcha is the keli ma'aseh bracha. The simcha brings all kinds of bracha. I grew up here. Ich a Babich. Born and raised, okay? Ich bin da ausgewachsen. Und ich da ist leb meine Jahre. Mit schon mit den einzigen Gula mit jetzt war stehen mit I grew up here. I grew up here. And the Rebbe is a Yid whose whole mitzvah is a simcha. And B'tava is not that way. But the Rebbe said, I don't know everything, but they say that the Rebbe said that B'tava is a Morosh Cheder. The Rebbe is an introvert, a person of Gvura. And he says, Ge'arbet of Zich, the Rebbe worked on himself, he should always be B'simcha. And the Rebbe demands of every chassid to be b'simcha. It's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You know what the difference between easy and simple? Easy means it's not hard. Simple means it's not complicated. Meaning, I tell you to do something, and you don't want to do it. Why do you do it? I don't understand it. Okay, that's one problem. The problem is, I understand exactly what you want, but it's hard. Simcha isn't complicated. It's not. But it's hard. To always be freilich. If you're a meshuganet, a mechayah. Meshugoyim have no trouble. The 1 mile of being a meshuganet, meshugoyim are always happy. But you're never not a meshuganet. You're a normal person. And you got bills to pay and a mortgage to do and all the good zaken is chalimud, weistig, mona achas apoyim. Baruch Hashem is vadaygit. The stuff. Right? Now, if you're sad, you're going to have more money. If you're happy, you're going to have less money. Of course not. Never then. It's easier to be sad than to be happy. Why? But I said before, a person doesn't do an aveda. Lahach is a hard portion kakoyach nicht. Right? He doesn't have koyach. At 9 o'clock in the morning, you don't do avedis. 4 o'clock, you don't get angry at your wife at 9 o'clock in the morning. Why? You just slept. You just davened. You just ate breakfast. You had a cup of coffee. You're in a good mood. Later in the day, you come back from work and your boss is a Rosh Merusha and he bullied you. And you come into the house and your wife starts to nag you about the kids. So you platz. Kasa like you But that's where it came from. Stel's a fun, you had koyach. So you wouldn't get angry. It's the same exact thing. What's the difference between simcha and atzvus? Pashat. Atzvus is easy. Simcha is hard. Simcha is right and atzvus is wrong. Because simcha is hard and atzvus is easy. When Mashiach's going to come, we'll have koyach. Right now, we've got to bring Mashiach. How? By finding the koyach to be besimcha all the time. The trademark of a chassid, is a happy man. The trademark of a chassid, you meet a chassid, what's the idea? He's a chassid, not what color hat he's wearing and what shape his hat is and what kind of beged he's wearing. The simen von a chassid is a freilich rid. With the simen von a misnag, it's an ungeblasen rid. It's not complicated. Wear any outfit you want. A chassid is freilich. Und nicht a chassid is ungeblasen. Right? What's the difference between an optimist? What's the opposite of an optimist? Come on, you know the stuff. The opposite of an optimist is not a pessimist. The opposite of an optimist is a realist. Aber es ist ein he's very realistic und geht fachmoret. You understand? I'm not. I'm not making jokes. The Rebbe, it hangt Yud Shvat, Yud Shvat darf man reden wegen dem Rebbe und wegen des Kashes. Und man reden wegen sich. Really, we have to talk about ourselves. And one of the basic definitions of a chassid, of our Rebbe, wegen dem is of his reden, is simcha. The Rebbe himself was a Yid, was cool, simcha. Ich habe gehört von Rabbi Ruben Tage. Sie gewesen da Yiden, wo sie gekommen von Shanghai. In Shanghai, they went 3 yeshivas. You heard about this, right? You heard of Shanghai? Shanghai is China. When the Second World War started, so it's one of the biggest nesim in history. Yamach Shemei Hitler and Yamach Shemei Zachrei Stalin made a pact. It's a great nes. And they divided Poland between themselves. Vilna was on the Russian side. Nobody could imagine that you're better off by the Russians than by the Germans. So it came and I had the Heilige Belze, the Battle of Belze gesagt. Aber es in Russland. Ich hatte von der Belze Chassid. Ich hatte von der alte Belze Chassid. The Belze Rebbe said in Russland. And he told me as follows. Die was dann gefahren in Russland, dann geblieben 90% leben. Die was dann geblieben in Poland, they 90% tot. It's very simple, it wasn't complicated. The Belze Rebbe said when the Second World War started, it was again in Russland. Go east. Die Yeshivas are gefahren in Russland. Was in Russland? Vilna. Sie gewesen die Mira Yeshiva, sie gewesen die Lublina Yeshiva, und sie waren die Lubavitch Yeshiva. Alle Rosh Yeshivas. Noch ein Machon, ich bin von jenen Talmidim. Wenn die Gemara sagt, als Rabbi Yechim sagt, er ist gebeten bei Aspasiones, es ist Allah in Beis Rivka, und Yavne v'chachameh. Es ist mamish b'muchish. Der Eibers hat ewig gelassen, Yavne v'chachameh. Ein japanischer Goy. Ein Goy. All the Rosh Yeshivas, and all the Mesnagdish Yeshivas, they were all Mira Talmidim. It's a fact. Mamish, ein Goy hat geraten mit ein paar tausend Jiden und die ganze Teile, was geblieben nach dem Machon, das die Gemara sagt, als es ausgepelt, man soll sagen, das Heilen ab Tzadik, und Rat von Beis Rebbe und Javna Chachameha. Sie gewinnen Wilna. Und danach sind sie gefahren in Mizrach, East, durchgegangen in Russland, nach Russland ist China, ist China, sie gegangen bis in Yam, and they went to the Japanese islands. They're given in Japan, because that's not the folks. Till the end of 1941, in Tashkent Base, when Japan, until Japan attacked America, the Bachim were in Japan. They were not starving. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, they became very paranoid about foreigners, so they kicked out all the Bachim, they went to Shanghai. In Shanghai hat man gehungert. Shanghai, they starved. Menschen sind gestorben von Hunger. Shanghai hat man gehungert. Shanghai hat man gehungert. Anyway, nach dem Machon was nicht gekommen ahead. After the war, they came to America. Sie gewinnt die Lubavitcher Bacherim, sie gewinnt die Lubliner Bacherim, und sie gewinnt die Mira Bacherim. He says, so from these Bacherim, gewann alle Yeshivas, the emissaries. From these Talmidim, from the Lubliner, gewann alle Chassidische Rosh Yeshivas, and from the Mira, gewann alle Litvische Rosh Yeshivas. I mean, it's almost true. It's a bit like Guzma, but not too much. Mamish, not too much. Anyway, aber zu wissen, ich bin Azelche, und im Kemel Chassid, the Rein Bacherim. And some of them were Gracie Eluyim. The Kemel Chassid, there was a Baruch and a mention, he came from Machon, they lost their home mishpachas. A lot of them got married, and they built mishpachas. Aber sie gewinnen Azelche, but then the Kemel Chassid got. Und sie haben sich gedreht. Sie haben sich gedreht, bei aller Gedeirim. They're going to the Satmar Rebbe, and they're going to the Rebbe also. Big Talmid Chacham, Gracie Eluyim. But they had, it's a Baruch and a mention. Und da bist du Makarev gewesen. Es gewesen eine, Rabbi Ruben told me his name, but I don't remember. There was a few of them. There was a man named Malin, sie gewesen Shmuel Charkiver, ich weiß nicht den Namen. I heard these names from others, but you heard about this person, Shmuel Charkiver? These were Talmidei Chachamim Atzumim that came from the war. Some of them never got married, and they would go into the Gedalim. So it was a Polish. And that was Talmud. It was not the Lubavitcher Chassid, but he learned the Lubavitcher before the war. And he came here, he never got married. When it's a Chidreit, he would run around from God, but it's a Chidreit, his life was Teda. So he went from one yeshiva to another yeshiva, one yeshiva. He would go into the rebbe, he would schmooze, Geld to take a hat, it verdient. I don't know how, but he had money. And one of his stops was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So Rabbi Reuben told me that he heard from him that in Lametz, is a Reinschem Rebbe. This guy went to them, I'm sorry, I remember his name. Vus macht the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Vus macht the Lubavitcher Rebbe? For those beginners, like, how you doing, Rebbe? Vus macht the Lubavitcher? It's very chutzpahdik. Vus macht the Lubavitcher Rebbe? That's the kind of connection he had. So without a hesitation, the Rebbe says, Ich bin Tomid b'simcha. This guy walks in, a broken Jew. He came from Muhammad, and he didn't have a life. We were raised on a diet of simcha. Levi Yitzchak, we were raised on a diet of joy.